Parshat Tazria, Kapitel Yud Gimel, Pasuk Mem Vav, 1346. 1346. Perik Yud Gimel, Pasuk Mem Vav. Chapter 13 in Tazria, in the book of Leviticus, Parshat Tazria, Pasuk 46. And also, please take out a Chumash Bamidbar. And we are going to focus on Parshas Nosoi, on a Parshas Nosoi, that's Perik Hey, Pasuk Aleph. That's Shlishi in Parshas Nosoi. That's the second Sedra after Bamidbar, the beginning of the book of Numbers. Okay, so we're starting. So before we go, I would just like to bring to your attention, and it's my privilege and an honor to bring to your attention that today's shir is sponsored by a doctor we all know, Dr. Charles Lankram, who has been a regular to our shir from its inception, from day one, always coming, rain or shine. And he is dedicating the shir to his mother, Alea Sholem. Her yahrzeit was Vav Nisan, the 6th of Nisan, Basya Bas Rabbi Yeshaya Baruch. So today's shir is dedicated in her memory. She was a survivor of the Holocaust. Hashem, so may Hashem bring about a schus for her memory. The shir should be in her memory, and a schus and a merit for her memory. And it should bring about bracha ba'atzlacha for Dr. Charles Lankram and his family and his children and his einiklach. For bracha and atzlacha, his mother should be a good veteran for him. Thank you. We are, before we start, as always, we are going to give tzedakah, number one, because tzedakah tatzel mimoves, and the Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek says, as one of the inyanim, when there was a plague, so he said you should give one of the things, the easy things he said you should do is give tzedakah every hour, the smallest denomination, whatever it is in the currency, whatever the smallest coin, just it should be hourly, every hour around the hour, and also before we daven. So now before the shir, so in the schus of the Rogatchover Gaon and the schus of Limud Torah, like the Gemara says, it's Megin or Matzil, protects Yidden. So therefore we're also giving tzedakah, and also the tzedakah should go and serve as a refuah shleima for all those Yidden in B'soich Klal Yisrael, B'chol Ha'olam Kulo, who need quickly, hurriedly, a refuah shleima, B'tov Anira V'Anigla, Amen V'Amen. And therefore we'll say l'chaim l'vracha for them and for all of us, that Hashem should protect us, and we should it should be good only B'tov Anira V'Anigla. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam she'akon li'yah b'dvorah. L'chaim l'vracha. Okay. Today's shir, as mentioned, is geared to Parshat Tazria and Metzora. Now, I don't want to sound sensational because I'm not a sensationalist, even though others like to sound sensational today. And there are a lot of funny things flying around in today's technology, etc., and your gadgets about different things. We should be able to joke about around a lot of different things. What's there to talk about? But the ikar, being that while I was preparing the shir and my focus wasn't there, well, actually, I will conclude with something in a moment. Okay, we got to move on, right? I find that in the inyan of Metzora, there are similarities between the tzaras, and that is the affliction, right, of the tzaras, either in the skin, on the skin, or on the flesh, or on the scalp, or on the forehead, etc. Bekarachas and begabachas, in different sections of the person's body, the tzaras, which is an affliction, right? The Torah calls it tzaras. So even though the way it comes across from the Shas and the Gemaras and the Piskei Halachas of the Rambam and Hilchis Tumas Tzaras, the Rambam calls it Hilchis tumas tzoras, meaning that we accept in the halacha based on the Gemara in Masechta Erechim. The Gemara says, and the Rambam brings it in his commentary in Masechta Gaon, that tzoras, a person is afflicted with tzoras, with the skin, let's call it a disease or leprosy, however it's called. Unfortunately, with all the details out, this detailed in the Chumash, it's all as a punishment because of lashon hara, because of gossip and the like. And therefore, Hashem says, therefore he gets this punishment, as the Gemara says in Masechta Erechim Daf Tezayin, and as the Rambam says in Masechta, in his Mepirish HaMishnayos, and Masechta Negoim, and many other Meforshei Torah bring it to our attention. It's quite clear from the Shulchan Aruch and from the Rambam, meaning in Hilchas Tumas Tzoras, he calls it Hilchas Tumas Tzoras, meaning it's a ritual impurity. And it's a contamination, and that's why we find all the different halachas in Chumash and in the halacha in Rambam Hilchos Tumas Tzoras, that the different rules and regulations in relation to the one who is afflicted with the tzoras, and these rules and regulations are all based on the context. We have to see them in the context of, so to speak, that's a reconciliation for his punishment, and it's an atonement for his punishment, etc. That's a punishment and an atonement for it. And also, so to speak, that if he'll follow all the guidelines, that will be a healing for him, and that is a message for him, and it should hit home. And therefore it's called Tumas Tzoras, and therefore a lot of different things he's meant to do, as we will mention some of them, is that he has to act like, and he does certain things, and it's reflected in certain things the Torah implements, that the Metzora, the one who's afflicted with the Tzoras, has to follow in the process of his healing, that he is to be like an oval, like a mourner, like the Gemara says in Masechta Bayit Katan Daf Tezvav, and the Rambam brings it very clearly in Hilchos Tumas Tzoras. So that's what it's all about, and it's mainly about the Tumah and the Tahara. And therefore, that's why he is, so to speak, destined from people, and he's confined from the people, because in order that he shouldn't contaminate, like the Torah says clearly, explicitly, and Rashi and Chumash also seems to convey that message. Nevertheless, interestingly, we find Dafka in the Rishonim that they tell us that in addition to the inyan of the Tumah and the Tahara and the contamination, Dafka, the certain restrictions which are placed on the Metzorah and the regulations which are placed on the Metzorah, the one who's afflicted with the tzaras, identifies with such a disease which is infectious. It's contagious, it's infectious, it's not to be believed. The Rishonim, the classic, the Gdolei Yisrael, the philosophers, and the Meforshei Torah, the Rishonim explain the tzoras and the different dinim and the different halachas, as I'll mention some of them to you and share that with you. And there's a fair amount recorded. If you're interested, there is a wonderful work called Hagut, the Parshat Torah, authored by Rav Nachshoni, who was the editor of the Sha'arim newspaper. If you still remember, as a bacher, we used to read the Sha'arim newspaper, maybe had a different name those days. I forgot already what it was called. In Gittel's kiosk in Kfar Chabad in the 70s. Anyway, the paper doesn't exist any longer, but he was the editor, I believe, of that newspaper, Rav Nachshoni. He was a Talmid Chacham. So he penned a sefer called Hagut B'Parshat Torah. The teachers use them. He has different topics on each sedra, a very gewaldige work. It was even translated, I believe, possibly by Feldheim Publishers. So there he has a fair amount of information, which we're going to convey today. Possible share with you, we'll share together today based on a lot of is referenced there if you have it, or if you can get a hold of it, see it, and you'll find it there. I'm not out to be mechadish much, mainly just to share what the Rogatchover says, but till we get to the Rogatchover, it'll take some time. So let's just move on. Let me just share with you a couple of things, what the Rishonim say. So in addition to what it says in the Rambam Nevuchim, which he also mentions this thing and that it's infectious, let me read for you a word quote of the Ramban in the beginning of Parshat Tazria, in Kapitel Yud Beis, Pasuk Dalid. So there he speaks about the Nida and the different restrictions for the Nida and the different halachas which relate to the Isha Nida. And he goes on to say that he goes on to speak about a Metzora, and he says, we find by the Metzora that it says, by the Metzora, which we'll soon read that pasuk, it says, Bodod Yeshev Mechutz Lamachane, he should be confined and out of the encampment with all the rest of the people are. And he says, we therefore see that there's something unique about the Metzora which is not found by the others who have ritual impurity, as we will discuss further on. And he says that's something unique. And he says, we say, Bodod Yeshev Mechutz Lamachane, it means that he should be confined, and it says Yeshev michutz lamachna. Says the Ramban, Yeshev means he should stay put in the confinement. Stay put. So listen to what he says. Why do we find this expression dafka? By the Metzora, he says as follows. He says the reason is he shouldn't roam the streets. He should be confined and stay put. Why? Mazikin. He says ruchoi, his breath. Vehevloi, his breath, right? His breathing, his when he talks to the people, ruchoi, because the ear and his breath cause harm. His ear and his breath cause harm, says the Ramban. So that's very clear. It's infectious. He says it causes harm. He's not talking about tumah. He's talking about mazikin. Mazikin means not tumah dafke. It's much more explicit in the other Rishonim, as I'll go on to quote for you, and that is it's in the Das Kein in Bali Atoisvis. Everyone has a Mikrois Gdoilis at home. So in the Das Kein in Bali Atoisvis, on the Pasuk in Parshat Yud Gimel, in the Pasuk Mem Vav, which we mentioned, the 46th Pasuk. So there the Das Kein in Bali Atoisvis says, he says clearly, Bodod Yeshe, why should he be confined? He says because that illness, he calls it an illness, the Metzora, the Tzaras, he calls this affliction of his skin and the Tzaras, what he has, he says is a choli, is an illness. He says, Mispashit b'bnei adam ha'regilim etzloi. That's infectious. And therefore, if they come in contact with him, it's contagious. I'm a Furush Adas Kainim, one of the Rishonim on the spot, in your standard Mikrois Doilas. I'll just mention a couple of words. In the Cheskuni, says the same. The Cheskuni says also on that Pasuk, Bodod Yeshev, he says, Shecholi, that's why we say, Mechutz Lamachana Meishavo, you shouldn't roam the streets with the rest of the people in the street. Shecholi Zem Mispashet, El Bnei Adam, Regilim Etzloi. These are the words of the Cheskuni, if you have a Cheskuni. Again, one of the Rishonim, Rabbi Yosef Cher Sher from the Bali Atoisvis, says the same. These are his words. The same words which we mentioned before. Therefore, he should be confined. That no people should come near him. He has to be restricted and confined. He shouldn't hang around. And listen to what the Moshe Skenim says. The Ikar is a pella. I just had a tour ala Torah. What did I do with it? Oh, I'll bring it to your attention in a minute. There's something even more unique. You'll soon see. So in the Moshe Skenim ala Torah, we mentioned for the Bali Atoisvis, he says clearly, this is the mode of this illness. He calls it an illness. Whoever this fellow endeavors comes in contact with, I feel a midaber imoy. Or he only just talks to him and converses with him. It's infectious, God forbid. The Torah commands he has to therefore segregate and separate himself from people. That is, like I say, mentioned a couple of them, and there are more. But time doesn't allow to go and elaborate. But let me just bring to your attention what the Ibn Ezra says. The Ibn Ezra says as follows. There's another halacha in relation to the Metzora, and that is, take a look at the Pasuk right before that in Pasuk, in the Pasuk Mem Hey, in Parshat Tazria, there the Torah says, as follows, it says, Val Sofam Yate, he should cloak himself to his mustache. In other words, he should cloak himself, cover himself up, right? Mask himself. He should wear a mask. Yeah, so Rashi says the reason is because he's what? Because etc. It's all based on like the Gemara says, actually, in the Gemara and the Halacha says, and also the Rashi says it on the spot, like an over, like a mourner. That's the way Rashi says. But listen to what the Ibn Ezra says. The Ibn Ezra says the reason he's supposed to wear a mask, says the Ibn Ezra very clearly, explicitly on the spot. See, the Ibn Ezra says the reason why. Batam shelo yazik biruach piv, shelo yazik biruach piv. So what is it? The droplets, call it what you, we're not talking about sneezing or coughing. Just keep away, don't even talk to him. Just because yazik beruach piv, the ear just spreads, and therefore it's in the ear, and therefore you have to watch out. And it's quoted, recorded also in the Torah ala Torah, the Torah Oruch ala Torah, the Pirush HaTur, who wrote not just the Balaturim, but he wrote a Pirush Torah Oruch. He says, Bodod Yeshev, Lefish Derech Za'achoyli Shekol Misha Mishtadul Imoy, Yafilu Medaber Imoy. he says like the other Rishonim, and then he also says, Val Sofam Yata, what does he wear a mask? Pirushi Chasapiv. He has to close his mouth, cover his mouth. They shouldn't be able to come in contact with his breathing, with his reach. Unfortunately, all of that causes is infectious. Also, and not in vain, also the Meforshim say, actually it's a Meshech Chochmah. The Meshech Chochmah says in Parshat Tazria, Rabbi Meir Simcha Midvinsk says a gewaldig interesting thing. And I'm not going to read it for you, it's going to take too long. But nevertheless, it's in his Parsha, in Parshat Tazria. I'll just tell you the Maramokim. That is in Meshech Chochmah, in Parshat Tazria, Kapitel Yud Gimel Beis, there the Meshech Chochmah brings from many Chazals that you should know, he says, the Negoim is a Machla Hamidabekes. It is an infectious disease. And therefore he brings from different places, from the Tosefta and from the Medrash Rabbah, that people kept away from the areas where they were, and for where the Metzorah were, and they kept far away from them. They should be segregated from them in order that it shouldn't be, being that it's infectious. And he says, and in very gewaldige thing. Also, I'm saying other Meforshim also bring to our attention, that's why one has to keep his distance. We're going to go on to discuss that not just must he further himself, but even within those who can come, or there's a certain allowance that they should be near each other, etc., whatever, they also there's a distance they have to keep far away from him. And the distance, in other words, the 6 foot, which we know of our restrictions today, without really identifying one with the other, all of these different things which are now implemented by the different governments throughout the globe, which all the scientists and the doctors telling us to do, and the health centers, etc., and the Misrad HaBriyut, call it what you like, etc., is found all in the Rishonim when it comes to certain diseases, etc. The Iker, what he says, therefore, the Meshech Chochmah says an interesting thing. And he says, being that it's a choli amidabekes, it's infectious. So when comes the kohen, and the kohen has to what? The kohen has to bring about the cleansing process, like we're going to learn in Parshas Metzora, b'huva ala kohen. And he says the only reason the kohen is the one who brings about the cleansing process is because he's the one who is vaccinated, and he's the one who is immune. Because you have to have someone who is above and beyond, someone who is nivdal, someone who is especially inherently holy and far removed from any infection or disease, etc. And that is the kohen. And because the kohen is, because it says on the kohen, so therefore he has this built-in immunity, and therefore he's able to bring, so to speak, the healing upon this Metzorah. We're moving on, and that was enough to share with you. This is just giving you like a brief description of what the Rishonim say on this topic, which the reason why I'm mentioning it is as follows, and that is being that because they identify it with the unfortunate disease and illness and the plague which Nebuch has affected mankind, and unfortunately Klal Yisrael throughout the globe, etc., unfortunately. So I believe, and that is my strong belief, that based on what the Alter Rebbe says in the name of the Zohar, where the Zohar says that Yidden were enslaved in bondage in Mitzrayim, b'chomer ubelveinen, with mortar and bricks. So the Zohar HaKadosh says, b'chomer do kal v'chomer, ubelveinen do libun hilchesa. Chomer doesn't mean mud. Chomer means kal v'chomer, the principles, how to learn to go about and analyze Torah, and how to extrapolate halachas in Torah. Yud beis midrash ater in the dreshas bahem. Bilveinim is libun hilchas, to crystallize halachas. And basically the gist of that Zohar is to convey that a Yid, God forbid, as they say in Yiddish, if God forbid someone has to, whatever, is doomed to be chas v'chalila. So by studying the halachas of these inyanim, so with that, so to speak, it keeps away the disease in such a way, because we are, so to speak, discussing it only in the context of Torah, and that's where it should remain, only in the context of halacha. And definitely, being that we're discussing Torah of the Rogatchover Gaon, who was the true Sarah Torah. So definitely, b'koyach Torah, with the Torah of the Torah of the Sarah Torah, the true Sarah Torah. So definitely, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bring about that we should see in a very clear, explicit way, in a tangible way, that what the Gemara says in Soita, that Torah is Magino, Matzla for Klal Yisrael, Ubesech Klal Yisrael, Amen, L'chaim v'Levracha. That was a too lengthy introduction, and it's already half an hour which passed. As I get to Stalamal, we're going to have to wrap it up, so I'm going to cut out half of the things we were meant to discuss. So let's now go back to the Chumash, and we're going to go through this quite quickly, as always. We have, I believe, an additional time because of whatever, but let's go anyway. When Davis will schlafen, soll einschlafen. It's okay. I believe we have our technician of the night. I want to just say before I forget, I won't forget. Thank you very much, Menchi, for organizing the shir. And I tell you now, everybody, thanks for all who have joined in. Everybody in their own individual schus. They should have all the merits of the shir should be bestowed upon them and their families. Okay, we're moving on. So going to the Chumash. The Chumash says as follows. The Chumash says in Parshat Tazria, in Kapitel Yud Gimel Pasuk Memvov. I'm going to read it in the Chumash. The Pasuk reads, Kol Yemei Asher Hanega Bo Yitma Tomehu Bodod Yeshem Mechutz Lamachana Meishavoi. So the Art Scroll translates it in the plain English. All the days that the affliction is upon him, he shall remain impure. Yitma Tomehu. He is impure. He shall stay in isolation. His dwelling shall be outside the camp. Rashi has what to say, and he teaches us as follows. We're going to mention some what Rashi says, but let me just bring to your attention. Let's go like we're jumping the gun, and let's move on. And that is in Chumash Bamidbar. There are two parshiyos in the Torah. There's another parsha in the Torah, in Parshat Nosoi, and that is in Chumash Bamidbar in Kapitel Hey and Shlishi. There, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, and Rashi tells us that this parsha was commanded. It was on the day when the Mishkan was assembled. B'yom shehukam ha-Mishkan, HaKadosh Baruch Hu mandated the Yidden in this commandment. We'll soon see why, says Rashi. So the Torah, what does the Torah say in Kapitel Hey in Parshas Nosoi? Tzavas b'nei Yisrael, command the Yidden, v'yishalchum and amachne, you should send out of the camp called Tzorua v'chol zav v'chol temel nefesh. And I'll translate it in the Art Scroll Chumash. Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, command the children of Israel that they shall send away from the camp everyone with tzoras, everyone who has had a zav emission, and everyone impure by a corpse. Okay, these are all different grades of Tumah V'Tara, as the Gemara explains in Masechet Pesachim, Daf Samach Zayin, page 67, where the Gemara discusses why the Torah details all the three, because one has more stringent impurity, ritual impurity than the other, and therefore they're enumerated separately. The Gemara has a whole discussion on that, which one's more ritually graver, so to speak, more tummy than the other. Okay, we're going on, which is more stringent in the Tumah, and which we have to therefore follow the stringencies. Let's go on. It goes on to say, the pasuk says, Gimel mizacher ad nekevet tishalechu el michutz lamachan tishalchum v'leitamu es machaneim asher ani sheichem b'seichem. If you notice, this pasuk mentions the word machane, encampment, many times, and we'll soon see what that means. So the pasuk reads the way Art Scroll translates it: male and female alike shall you send away to the outside of the camp. Shall you send them so that they should not make their camps impure within which I dwell. All righty. And the Torah continues in Pasuk Dala, they asked b'nei Yisrael, Yidden implemented the Tzivui of Hashem, Yishalchu esem el chutz lamachane, kashadibar Hashem el Moshe kenos b'nei Yisrael, and the translation reads, the children of Israel did so. They sent them to the outside of the camp, as Hashem had spoken to Moshe, so did the children of Israel do. And the Gemara in Pesachim, Rashi brings it in a nutshell. I don't want to go into the details. There's a lot of technical details in the Gemara in Pesachim, Daf Samach Zayin, and also in the Sifri and Parshas Nosoi. But Rashi brings it in a nutshell, and he references the Masechta Pesachim, where basically there are two Tanoim who argue exactly how we extrapolate, where do we know these dinim. But the final ruling, that's what's relevant to us, and that is, when the Yidden traveled in the desert, there were three encampments. There was a Machane Shechina, that we know throughout the Shas, we know it like we say from Chumash and Rashi. Rashi says it right here. There was a Machane Shechina, the encampment where the Shechina dwelt, where Hashem dwelled, and then there was the Machane Levia, that was the Machane, the encampment where the Levites dwelled, and then there was the Machane Yisrael, where all the Am Yisrael, all of the rest of the Jewish people dwelled. And the Torah teaches us, based on as the Gemara extrapolates from the different psukim, that, like I said, a lot of technicalities, but Rashi brings it in a nutshell as follows: that there are different types of Tmeim, those who are ritually impure, and the Torah details them. If we noticed in Pasuk Beis, the Torah says who they are. There's a Tzorah, one with Tzoras. there is a Zav or a Zava, Tzaras, that's the Zav, and the Chol Tomei Lo Nefesh. So the rule is as follows. Chol Tomei Lo Nefesh. Someone who is come in contact with the corpse becomes ritually impure, becomes tummy, becomes contaminated. He's prohibited to be in the machane shechina. He has to be sent out of the machane. So the general rule of the Torah says, send them out of the machane. They shouldn't contaminate the machane. Says the Torah as follows. All of the three have to be removed, and they're banished from the machane shechina. The machane shechina, where was that? Where the shechina dwelled, and that was in the time of the desert. That was b'soich hakloim, meaning within the curtains. That is, so to speak, the courtyard of the Mishkan. Okay, the Chatzar HaMishkan, that was called like the Azorah, which identifies with, equates with the Azorah in the Beis HaMikdash. We'll soon mention it. Okay, and then so everybody's banished from there. How about the Machane Leviah? Because all the Machanos contain a certain inherent kedusha, where Hashem dwells there, and therefore the Jewish people rest there. So the Machane Leviah, where the Levites are dwelling, and their dwelling place with Moshe and all the Levites are dwelling around the Mishkan, Sovev La Mishkan Yachanu, like we learn in the Chumash. So the Machane Leviah, the Tomei Meh, someone who comes in contact with the corpse, may be in the Machane Leviah. He's not, he stays, he's just banished from the Machane Shechina. He can stay in the Machane Leviah. Who is meant to be banished from the Machane Leviah? The other two. That is, those who have the Zav emission, from the bodily emission, they have to move out of the Machane Leviah, and also the Metzora has to move out of the Machane Leviah. Then, they're banished from the Machane Leviah. Then, but who may stay in the Machane Yisrael? Then the Gemara goes on and tells us, and Rashi tells us, that the Machane Yisrael, the one who has the Zav or the Zava, is banished from the Machane Leviah, but may be in the Machane Yisrael, in the encampment where all of the Jewish people were, and with all the Shvatim rested, etc., and dwelled and encamped. But the Metzora is out of the Machane Yisrael, also kicked out, banished for the Machane Yisrael. So the Metzora is banished from all three, and as according to one opinion of the Gemara, because his impurity is very severe, and therefore he's pushed out of all of them. The other Mandomer said, and the Tomei Mes, the one who has the Zav or the Zava, the bodily emission is not as severe, therefore he's only banished from the Machane Shechina. And then we have the Tomei Mes, which is only banished from the Machane Leviah. He's only banished from the Machane Shechina. So one is banished from the Machane, all are banished from the Machane Shechina, or just two are banished from the Machane Leviah, and one is banished from the Machane Yisrael, and that is the Metzora. And he's out of the Machane Yisrael, and he only, he tails. How does he travel in the desert? Those who had Tzaras, both male or female, are going to tail. They're going to follow all the Jews as they journey through the desert. They will tail and follow them, etc., etc. So that's what the Torah says here. So the Torah says they should keep out of the encampment in order not to spread the tumah, as we said. Okay. Now, here the Torah is telling us in Parshat Metzora, so there the focus is, and Rashi says the reason why they were commanded then, being that then they assembled the Mishkan. So that's when the Kedushas HaMachnes were established. That's when the curtains of the Mishkan were established. The tabernacle was then assembled. So therefore there becomes a Machane Shechina, which is established. And that's where we have the Machane Leviah, which is around the Shechina, and then the Machane Yisrael, which is surrounding the Machane Leviah. And therefore that's where we have the Kedushas HaMachnes. That's why it's found after there. Okay, so we're telling them, we're basically getting them out of the Machnes, not to contaminate the Machnes. So that's the focus of Parshas Nosei. When it comes to Parshas Tazria, this is especially assigned for the Metzora, a special halacha for the Metzora. Now here the Torah says, in addition, that's seemingly the additional message. In addition to what the Torah says, and this is the pasuk, Kol Yimei Asher Neged Bo Yitma. It says, Mechutz LaMachane Moshavoi. He has to be out of the Machane, and Rashi tells us on the spot that he has to be out of the Gimel Machanos, even though it says Machane singular. But as we mentioned and elaborated in Parshas Nosei, that he's meant to be banished from all the three encampments. Therefore, he's out of the Machane Yisrael, and that's why Rashi says it here, and Rashi again reiterates it and repeats it at the beginning of Parshas Metzora. B'huva l'kohen, he's brought mechutz l'machane, etc. It says v'yotza l'kohen mechutz l'machane in the beginning of Parshas Metzora. Rashi says it there again, chutz l'sholish machnos, because he's sent away there when he is what? It's been proven that he is definitely. It's certain that he's definitely a Metzora, so therefore he's knocked out there. He's there. Okay, so here the focus is, true, we're repeating and saying what it says there in Parshas Nosei, but the Torah seems to be saying an additional message, Bodod Yeshev. And Rashi therefore says, Bodod Yeshev means he is to be confined. We don't find that terminology and phraseology in Parshat Nosei. We're just sending them all away. And we're saying they have to be confined. So here Rashi tells us a couple of messages. Now, let me just say to you as follows. You have your conventional Mefarshim, number one, in the Pirush Rashi. Most of them Mefarshim in Pirush Rashi, and that is Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi, and also most of them Mefarshim Rashi, who don't seem to explain it very much, but at least the Sifsei Chachamim and also the Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi, like I say, who is the super commentary on Rashi, seems to learn as follows. Boded Yeshev Shalayir Shar Tumeim Yeshvim Imay. The plain definition of that means that the other Tumeim, those other people who are ritually impure, shouldn't be with him. And this is connected to the next Rashi. Being that it has to be Mechutz Lamach, and he has to be out of the three encampments, he's banished from all the three. So therefore he is confined alone. He is alone. He's confined alone. You know why he's confined alone? Because we know there's one guy who could still be in the Machna Leviah. One group. One category can be in the Machna Leviah. There's another category who can be also in the Machna Shechina, in the Machna Yisrael. He's the only one who is banished from all of the Machanot. So therefore he's confined, meaning he's all alone. And the Pasuk is teaching us that the one who is allowed to be in the Machna Leviah, the one who is allowed to be in the Machna Yisrael, you would think that they're allowed to go and visit him in the Machna Yisrael. Says the Torah, that even though we pushed them out of the Machna Shechina, pushed them out of the Machna Leviah, but there's no way they're allowed to go and spend time in the Machna Yisrael, out of the Machna Yisrael, and spend time and mix and mingle with who? With the Metzora, who was out of the Machna Yisrael. And that's the message of Bodod Yeshev. He's left there all alone. That's the simple way they're learning. Now, also, the Mefarshim in the Teras Kohanim. There's a text, I can't go into the details, it's much too late, but it's really beautiful if we had more time. Unfortunately, we don't. I don't want to go on with the shir again next week, so we'll just have to go quickly through it. If one takes out a Teras Kohanim, and that is the halachic medrash on this pasuk, so there is a message of the Teras Kohanim. Now, the conventional way of learning this Teras Kohanim is the way like most Mefarshim learn, and I'm going to mention a few of them, and that is starting from the Malbim, in his Pirush on the Teras Kohanim and the Chumash. Those who have a Malbim, mainly he's saying it. He says it as a definition of the Teras Kohanim and the Medrash, the halachic Medrash. I understand from the Torah Tmima that he's basically cut and paste from the Malbim, even though it doesn't quote the Malbim, but he says the same Pirush of the Malbim in a different twist, but the same message is found in a Pirush in the Teras Kohanim called Asiris Ha'efa. That's from the Heilige Kamarne, the one who was Mechaber, he was a big Mekubal, the Zohar Chai on the Zohar, known in the Chassidic world and also in the Torah world. It was a big London. He wrote a commentary on Masechta Shkolim, and he wrote a commentary on Mishnah. It's called Atzei Eden. He also has a Pirush Asir Sa'if and Teres Kohanim. He was a big London and a big Gaon and a big Mekubal. I'll call upon him. So he too seems to learn, obviously learns that way. He doesn't learn like the Malbim, but the gist is the same, as I'll soon convey to you. And that also, and then there's a Pirush Ezra's Kohanim, also a known Pirush. Now let me just say to you, there are different texts of the Teres Kohanim, and I don't want to go into the details, sorry, as mentioned. And it's all seemingly based, and that seems the Vilna Gaon seems to amend the text as usual. Quite often, as we find that Vilna Gaon does that, even though I haven't seen in the Aderes Eliyahu, the Pirush of the Vilna Gaon on Chumash, which very frequently says Drashas Chazal without quoting them, but in his commentary he means to refer to Teres Kohanim. There I don't seem to find that he should amend it. He quotes it as we see in our Teres Kohanim, the way it is in the standard edition of the Teres Kohanim in the Safra. Nevertheless, he does amend the text in his Agoy on the Safra, the Teres Kohanim, and I understand, and it's very obvious from the Malbim and all the other Mefarshim, they accept this and appreciate the text of the Vilna Gaon. Like I say, this text is already there even before the Vilna Gaon. It seems Rabbeinu Hillel, one of the Rishonim, also seems to appreciate that text. Enough said about the text, but they want to say again. Basically, according to the conventional way of learning is just the way the Rabbeinu Eliyahu Mizrahi learns in the Rashi, on the Chumash, and that's the way they all learn the Teres Kohanim. Except they learn it out from different wording of the pasuk, because if you take a good look at the pasuk, you will see that there seems to be a lot of extra wording of the pasuk. And according to the Vilna Gaon, the words which are Yitma, Tomei, Hu, etc. seem to be superfluous, seems to be repetitious, an extra, etc. And therefore the Teres Kainim, based on these extra words, derives these halachas. Mainly, what is the message? The message is of this pasuk, and with that they reconcile all the extra words. And the Torah says as follows: if you notice, this pasuk is coming in sequence to what? It's coming in sequence to the type of tzoras, which is bekorachtoi or begabachtoi. And as he explains it in the art scroll, on the tzoras, on his posterior or frontal baldness, right? You get it? So you do get it, you don't get it, you shouldn't get it. But the ikar, okay, so it's bekarachtoi, begabachtoi. And in sequence to that, the Torah says this pasuk, that it should be Yitma Tamehu Bodod Yeshev. And they explain the Torah's Kainim is out to teach us that this halacha of Bodod Yeshev Mechutz Lamachana Meishavoi is not just relating back to the one who has the tzoras bekarachtoi, begabachtoi, but it's also relating back to an original case, a case which is mentioned even before that, and that is a pasuk before, and that is pasuk mem, where it says, not just pasuk mem, but also many pasukim before, where it speaks about that there was the tzaras was beroish oy bezokan, that's chamishi, so he was afflicted on the scalp or on the beard. So that's on his head somewhere or on his face. So the pasuk is teaching us Tomei and Yitma Bodod. That's the additional lashonis of the pasuk is teaching us to include also that category, and not just that category, even the original category of the Torah, where there's the tsaras, which is afflicted on his skin and on his flesh, which has nothing to do with his head, not with the rosh, not in the zakah, not karachte, not gabachte. So this pasuk is coming to teach us. That's why it says all these additional lashonis. Tamehu Bodod Yeshev, it's Tamehu is coming to include this case, Yitma is coming to include the other case, etc., etc. But according to all the Pirushim, that's what I'm saying. If you have the original texts of the Teres Kainim and these Mefarshim I mentioned, look there, you'll see it's all there. And basically the gist is, like I said, the way the Rabbi Mizrahi teaches the Rashi, that there's no new halachas coming about here. Mainly it's teaching us what we understand from the Gemara in Pesachim Daf Samach Zayin and the Sefri and Parshas Nosai, and the way we would take Rashi at face value, and that is that we're saying as follows: each group, each category has to be sent out from his machna as mentioned, as detailed and mentioned above, right? Number one. Number two, that the Metzora has to be banished from all of the machnos. He's out of the Machne Yisrael, even out of the Machne Yisrael. Number two. Number three, that no one's allowed to be together with him. All the other Tameim, the Zov and the Tamei Mes, can't also be together with him. Okay, that's the way everybody, all the Mefarshim learn. Let's move on. But comes the Rogatchover Gaon, and he says something fascinating. And that is, he focuses on a pirush of the Ravad. The Ravid, the Bavusta Ravid, we know about Ravid, there were many Ravids, but this is the Ravid HaYodua, which is miyuchas to the pirush of the Ravid of the Teres Kainim. And the Ravid in the Teres Kainim doesn't have any variations of text. He has an original text of the Teres Kainim, which reads plainly just the way it's written in your standard Teres Kainim. And that is, I'm going to read the words for you. On the word Bodod Yeshev, without going further, in other words, the fact is that the rule is of Bodod Yeshev, according to him, let me just share with you one more point. And let me highlight that for you, so then you'll appreciate what the Rogatchover is being mechadish based on this Ravid. According to all the Mefarshim, and the Malbim says so, clearly Mefurish, and so also says the Asira Sa'efa. According to what we've discussed up to this point, when we say Bodod Yeshev, that the Metzora has to be out of the Machne Yisrael, so he's confined. The question is, and when we say no other Tmeim should be with him, we mean no other Tmeim. We don't say that no other people who are Metzorah, right? And that's the only thing we've excluded. No one else should be with him, meaning no other Tmeim. They all have to remain either in the Machne Levi or in the Machne Yisrael. How about, and they say as follows, a Mefurish Malbim, a Mefurish Torah Tmima, a Mefurish Asira Sa'efa, and like I say, you'll soon see something even more Mefurish. And that is, how about other Metzorah? After we've already, he is a Metzorah, he is he is, in other words, he is chiyuvi. In other words, we know for sure he is certainly a Metzora, right? He's a Metzora musgar. He has to be in confinement. The question is it solitary confinement? And therefore he has to be confined even from other Metzorah, right? Or no, there's no solitary confinement. Bodod Yoshev means that all the Metzorahim are out of the Machne Yisrael, but they'll all be together. Like Lahavdil, we shouldn't besonders wissen davon, but we know very well in Eretz Yisrael, they want to establish, because they're so hard-headed about sitting and learning Torah, Baruch Hashem. So therefore, I didn't mean that in a negative way. So therefore, Derry, whatever his name is over there, he's a fine Yid Mistama. But in the Shas party, good man. It's okay. The Iker. So he wanted to establish a Corona yeshiva. And Nebuch, all those who were found to be positive and had Nebuch the disease, and they were positive in the disease, the doctors didn't say that it's infectious one from another. They have it already. They've been infectious. So it's infectious. They're infected. They're contaminated. They can all be together. So we'll make a Corona yeshiva and all sit and learn. Anyway, it didn't work out for technical reasons. No Corona yeshiva. But the fact is that there's an allowance that all those who are Nebuch affected can be together, right? We're not saying the Metzora is that. I'm just, like I say, I'm not being sensational here at all, God forbid, and we're just moving on. And it's like I said, I know you'll read the newspapers or whatever, and they'll tell you that it's questionable if they should be together, if they shouldn't be confined. They do allow them to be together. I'm not going there now. But Lagabi the Metzora, according to all these Mefarshim, they allow the Metzora to be together, not a problem. Can be together. What should be the problem to be together? Why not? As long as they're all out of the Machne Yisrael, they can be together. Okay. Because there's nothing telling us that they can't be together. I'll tell you Nachmer, even more so. There is a pirush of a Yid, one of the Gedolei Yisrael. He has to be a Gadol Yisrael because he's quoted by Rabbi Mizrahi, who was a great sage from Turkey, as we know, the super commentary on Rashi. And he brings a pirush from Rabbi Avram Zutra. Now, who heard of Rabbi Avram Zutra? I'll tell you something. I never heard of him. And he's actually known as Rabbi Avram Zutra Mitivats. Well, I was curious to know who he is, and I take out a Shem Agdolim of the Chidah, and he only has to say as follows, that this Rabbi Avram Zutra, it doesn't quote Tivatz there, but that's what the way it's quoted in the, quoted in the Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi, in the Pirush Rabbi Eliyahu, on the Ram, the Mizrahi al Torah. I'm not talking about the Mizrahi party, it's also fine, I believe, etc. We're talking about the Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi, the God will be Yisrael, right? Rabbi Eliyahu, he's known as the Mizrahi. So in the Pirush Aram al Torah in Parshas Nosoi, he brings this Pirush in Parshas Nosoi. In Nosoi? No, sorry, he brings it in Parshas Metzora. I'm sorry. He brings it in Parshas Metzora and also in Parshas Tazria. And he quotes Rabbi Avram Zutra Mitivats, also quoted in Korban Aaron. The Korban Aaron is a known commentary on the Teres Kohanim. He also learns like all the Mefarshim till now, like we discussed. And the Iker, so this Rabbi Avram Zutra, so the Shem Agdolim says he has no other reference for him, doesn't know seemingly too much about him. Chidon knows about everybody. But in the Shem Agdolim, he says he's quoted in the Pirush of the Ram in Parshas Metzora. In other words, that's the only reference he has for Rabbi Avram Zutra, Mitivats. I'll call upon him this Rabbi Avram Zutra. Mitivats quoted, like I say, in the Ram in Parshas Metzora and in Parshas Tazria, and also quoted by the Korban Aaron in the name of the Ram. He wants to learn in the Teres Kohanim, that the Teres Kohanim is teaching us that just like we're saying, that the Metzora has to be confined, and which Metzora has to be confined? The one who has the Tzoraz, B'karachtoi oy b'gabachtoi, the same, the rule applies. The Shar Minu Goim have to be confined with him. According to him, the Teres Kohanim is actually teaching us the way his text reads. He learns in the Teres Kohanim that the halachic medrash is teaching us a halacha, that they actually, all of them have to be confined together. That's what it's teaching you. Bodod Yeshev is telling you that all the Mitzorahim have to be out there confined together, according to his pshat and his understanding of the Teres Kohanim. So here we have, like I say, not just there's a permit. And interesting, the Malbim teaches us, and the Torah Tmima repeats this. He says, that's the touch of Bodod. Bodod means, you can find Bodod on a group of people. It says, Am Yisrael. Yeah. Bodod. What's the Lashon? It says, he brings different psukim where it says, on the Klal Yisrael is Bodod, right? That they're shoiche, ki am levadad yishkon. Am levadad yishkon. So we're talking about an am. So it's levadad. They are, so to speak, confined and separated from all the rest of the nations. So we see even a group of people, we can say upon them levadad. Gewaldig says the what's it called? Says the Malbim and the Torah Tmima. But here it's not. If over here the Torah wants the Metzora to remain alone, it should have said Galmud. And he brings different psukim where we find Galmud means he's never all alone. He brings psukim and chazals that Galmud is all alone. Meaning that the Torah only says Bodod Yeshev, means that all the Metzorahim can sit together. So that's their sheet and that's their take. Comes the Rogatchover going based on the text of the Rava that he says as follows. This is what the Rava says. The Rava says, it says in the text of the Torah, I'm going to read it for you. Bodod Yeshev, Ainli Elazebul Vad. Minayin l'Rabbi Shara Menugoyim Talmud Leimer Bodod Yeshev. And he learns, it seems like in his text that read Bodod Yeshev Levadoi Yeshev. Basically, he's telling us that as follows, that even biyachas to Shar Menugoyim, this is the way the Ravid learns, that he says, what, and he explains, he says, what does this Torah Skanim want to teach us? That we're saying that this Metzora, the one who is afflicted with the tzoras, he should be confined. Levadoi, that's what the Torah Skanim, the halachic madrasa is teaching us. He is to be confined levadoi. That's the lotion of the Ravid in the Torah Skanim. What is that levadoi? He says, I understand based on the Torah Skanim, he says he reconciles a wonderful thing he always was disturbed with. He was bothered why the Gemara in Masechta Moed Katan and Daf Tezayin identifies the Metzora, says there's many brises, Toseftes brises quoted in Masechta Moed Katan. The Gemara says as follows. The Gemara says, the Metzora, the one who was afflicted with tzoras, is kiminuda uka'avel. Interesting, kiminuda, like someone who was excommunicated, a menuda, someone who was in nidui, uka'avel, like a mourner, okay? So he says, like a mourner, I understand, right? Because we find all the halachas, the restrictions of the Metzora is like a mourner. So we find that throughout the Shas, we find it in the halacha. It's ka'ave like a mourner. But what is this kiminuda that is excommunicated? Where is this additional thing? Says the Ravad in the Torah Skanim. The makor, the source that is kiminudel ka'avel, in addition to be regarded as a mourner and dealt with as a mourner, is also like an excommunicate. That is based on this Torah Skanim. Because what is the Torah Skanim teaching us? Something phenomenal, he says. A kiminuda, he is to be bodod levadoi. What does levadoi mean? Solitary confinement, because that's the din by a menuda. What's the din by a menuda? You have to further yourself. One has to distance himself. Like the Rambam Paskins in Hilchas Talmud Torah, at the end of Hilchas Talmud Torah, in the halachas of Nidui, that's the psak halacha, that you have to keep away dalad amis from a menuda, right? You have to distance yourself from a menuda, dalad amis, 4 cubits. B'meila says the Rogatchover, says the Ravid, based on this Torah Skanim, it means bodod levadoi, solitary confinement, meaning that no one else can be confined. He's kiminuda. That's the meaning kiminuda. What the Shas says from the brises. Kiminuda. You have to keep away from him, distance yourself from him. Kiminuda, arba ames, kiminuda. Okay, that's what the Ravid says. Actually, the Keren Eura in Masechta Moed Katan Daf Tezvav says, I don't see any expression in the halacha that the Metzora is like a menuda or even like an oval. Because the halacha is that all the halachas, which are restrictions and the mode of his healing for the Metzora is only like what it says in the Chumash. And those things are like a novel, but there are additional halachas which a mourner has to keep, which seemingly the Rambam doesn't paskin that applies to the Metzora. And definitely we don't find any halachas that he has to be identified or regarded like an excommunicate. That's what the Keren Eura says. In other words, he's bothered with all of the brises in the Gemara, where the Gemara says, take a look at the Keren Eura, those who have a Keren Eura, or like access it in one of your search engines. It's there. But the Ravid says, I have a reconciliation at least. Forget it, we're not talking about halacha now, we're talking about the brisa. The brisa has to be reconciled, like the Keren Eura himself says. It says in the brisa, the Metzora is kimenuda kavel. Says the Ravid, the mocker, the source is Torah Skanim. Says the Rogatchover, based on this, now it's a pella, I haven't really searched sufficiently to look at all the meforshim. But I'll go point, we got to move. Says the Rogatchover, going to nafkimine, based on this Torah Skanim, the way the Ravid treats it, it's the nafkamina will be, what will be halachic implication based on it? In beis mitzoroim mutorim leishev be etc. If two Metzorahim can dwell together, can be together. In other words, even though it's not explicit in the words of the Ravid, identifying with the Metzorah, if two Metzorahim can be together, but once the Ravid says the Rogatchover, that this halacha is teaching us, that it's bodo, that it is yeshiv levado, and therefore he has a criteria like a menuda, and because by the menuda we say that one has to further himself from the other person. Any person has to distance himself from a menuda 4 cubits. I understand the Rogatchover learns that the same applies for the menuda. Another menuda, everybody has to distance himself from someone who is an excommunicate. Not just people who aren't excommunicated, but even the one who is an excommunicate also has to further himself and distance himself from another excommunicate. That's the way the Rogatchover understands this Ravid. When he takes it Parshat, understands it that way. The Mela, therefore, the same now, like it's extended to the context of the Parsha, where we're talking about two Metzorahim, says the Rogatchover Gaon, you should know that the two Metzorahim, based on this Ravid, two Metzorahim, it'll be a problem that two Metzorahim shouldn't be able to sit together, because they had regarded like a menuda, and therefore they have to be distant from each other, and therefore it's not enough that should be confined. This Teres Kainim, according to the Rabbi, is telling us solitary confinement. Okay, so that's his take. Interestingly, many of the by the way, many of the Maramikaimis, many of the references in the sources which I'm quoting tonight is found in the Likutei Sichos of the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Chusay Yogan Aleinu, in Likutei Sichos volume 22 on Parshat Tazria, and Likutei Sichos volume 18 in Parshat Nosoi. And there he has a lengthy discussion about the two parshas of Parshat Nosoi and Parshat Tazria. And basically he wants to tell us, and he follows and he appreciates the approach of the Ravid and the Rogatchover Gaon, that, and he explains that these are two parshas. And that's exactly what we understand according to what we've just learned. That one halacha is, like we say, that's the Parshat Nosoi, that's a general rule that you have to keep out of the machna in order not to contaminate the machna, the encampment, and not to contaminate the people there. And that relates that he has to further himself from the machna. Then there's a new halacha in Parshat Tazria, and that is bodod yeshev. That's a positive aspect. And the Rebbe says that's part in the process of his healing. That in order, not just he has to keep away from other Tameim, and other Tameim have to keep away from him, but there comes a new halacha, bodod yeshev levadoi. And that's part and parcel of the process of the healing, not just not to contaminate, but part of his healing process is the Torah, bodod yeshev mechutz lamachna, bodod levadoi, that has to be in solitary confinement, and only then can he attain his tahara. And the Rebbe explains that we can have sometimes the machnos without the bodod and the bodod without the machnos. He has a lengthy discussion, and he discusses it, and also the Rogatchover Gaon discusses it in a response in Shailas Etshuvas Sefer Spanecha Chadoshos about the relationship of the bodod with the machnos, with the encampments, with both psukim, in other words. And he says it also in Masechta, in his commentary on Masechta Brachas and Daf Hey Amud Beis, because there's a Tosfos with the Rashi, and Machlokes time doesn't allow to elaborate, an interesting discussion. And there the Rogatchover elaborates there too, and then also in many other svarim, which actually yes.
Malachim says Beferish, Arba Metzorahim was sitting together outside the gate.
Who is quoting? Who is this?
Base.
Who's saying this?
Isaac,
excellent Shaila, wonderful, we're getting there. Baruch Hashem, Yashar, we're getting there. Okay, we're moving. Okay, I understand why Dr. Al Balbin raised it, is because he is the Kohen who has to bring the Torah. So therefore, he has to come in contact with the Metzorahim. So therefore, if you meet up with them, and he is the one who is immune, so he has issues with, So he's right, it's a Mefurish Apostle Malachim, and that is the Haftarah of Parshas Metzorah. We're going to get there. Just give it a minute. I just want to say, Rab Chaim Brisker also, in the stencil, that's the way he was known years ago, I don't know how they call it today, in the stencil, in other words, not in the gedrukte, in the stencil, you know what a stencil is, this is the typed, it's not in the printed, the published Rab Chaim al Rambam, but he's known as Rab Chaim stencil, so Omid Reish Lamed Heim, Omid Reish Lamed Vov, in the edition I have, which is taking us back 30, 40 years ago, so there on Omid Reish Lamed Heim, page 235 and page 236, he also highlights and brings out, and he sees it in a Rambam, that there's a new halacha in relation to the Metzorah, that not just he shouldn't contaminate the machane, but there's a new halacha of bodod yeshev, and he also reconciles many inyanim based on it. And I definitely want to share with you what the Rebbe says. So I wanted to say that a lot of the glosses, the references are taken and drawn from the Rebbe's Likutei Sichos and many other places, and many other svarim. We can't quote them all. Let me just read for you two halachas where the Rebbe wants to claim that according to the Rambam, the wording of the Rambam seems to also highlight Pashtus, the Shittas HaRambam, the Shittas HaRavid, in other words. And that is, listen to the Loshen HaRambam. The Rambam wrote his words with precision. The Rambam writes in Hilchas Tumas Tzoras, Perik Yud Halacha Zayin. The Rambam says, Din HaMetzora, the halacha of the Metzora is, which Rab Chaim Briskus in the stencil talks about this Rambam. And he says this Rambam is teaching us a new halacha that he has to be levado. But I'm talking about Taka the Diak Haloshin, and it could be Rab Chaim highlights it, but the Rebbe doesn't quote Rab Chaim. Al Kol Panim, the Rebbe says, and it says this in the gloss of the Likutei Sichos, Din HaMetzora, Sheyeh Eloi Moshav Levadoi. Yeah, Sheyeh Moshav Levadoi Chutz Lo Ir. Shenema Mechutz Lamachana Moshavoi. He brings the pasuk Mechutz Lamachana Moshavoi, but the Loshen HaRambam, which is with precision. You should have a Moshav Levadoi, which in essence is basically what the Rabbi taught us from the Bodod Levadoi. That was the Loshen of the Torah's Kohen and Bodod Levadoi, and even more powerful. So others want to already highlight that the Rambam says so in Perik Yud Halacha Yud Beis, where possibly over there you can't learn that way. But Levadoi would say that it means even where he's sitting, he has to be Levadoi that no one else is with him. Not just the other Tmeim shouldn't be with him, but also even the other Metzorah shouldn't be with him. And it's even most obvious to learn that way, the Rebbe says, because if you take out a Rambam, it's a novel Rambam, and it's a gewaldige Rambam to learn. Now there's no time to learn it. But in Hilchas Tumas Torah and Perik Design of the 16th Perik and Halacha Yud, where the Rambam has a big arichis, and there's a lot to discuss in that Rambam, and it's not just the Agoda. There are many, everything the Rambam writes is a halacha. The Rambam says a gewaldige Lashon. He speaks about all the different contaminations of the different levels and grades and types of nigoim of this illness or whatever. This affliction, which we find throughout the Chumash Parshat Tazria, both in his body and both in his home and both in his garments, etc., all of that. And the Rambam says, listen to a Lashon Rambam. The Rambam says that one brings the other, and he goes on to say, he will become a Metzorah. He says the Torah is going to bring him and cause by this that he's afflicted with the tzaras, that he'll end up being, listen to the words, Muvdal u'mefursam levadoi. You get it? So that's again that Loshen. He's Muvdal and really separated levadoi. And listen to what he goes on to say, that he shouldn't be involved in the sichas harashoim, where the evil sit and gossip. Now the Rebbe says a gewaldige thing. It's only logical to say that the Rambam means to say he has to be separated from the other Metzorah. Because every Metzorah was afflicted because they were a Bali Lashon Hara. Now, if you're going to say that the Metzorah could group together, just imagine what kind of gossip is going to go on. Each one became a Metzorah because he was a gossiper. You get it? And maybe he's going to make, you know what, I remember in Katanga there was a gewaldige Yid from the Shene Yidden there, Lipschatz. You remember Lipschatz told me in the shir once, he says, yeah, there was a Ganuvim Stiebel in Varsha. In Varsha there was a Ganuvim Stiebel. Shabbos they knew they couldn't go there, but Matzah because it was Shabbos. Darf davenim, darf sein Schiel. Aber noch Shabbos geht man arbeiten, darf kein Ganvenin. So all the Ganuvim got together, and everyone who was in a different industry they stuck together with their Stiebel. So you get it? All the Metzorah get together. Verstehst du mir? Yisrael. No way! So the Rebbe says, this Lashon seems to definitely say, if the reason he was segregated from the masses of all the rest of the people was because he was a Baal Lashon Hara, so definitely it's only sensible to say, and that's what the Rambam means to imply, that he's Takalevada, he even separated from other Metzorahim. That's the Shittas the Rebbe wants to highlights in the Lashon HaRambam like the Rabbi. We're moving on, and that's the way the Rogatchover understood the Rabbi. Now we're going to come in a moment to Dr. Bellman's point, which he raised, and we're getting there in a moment. Let's go on. Let me just bring to your attention as follows: the Rogatchover going. It's so late, but I'm sorry. You'd have to give me another 20 minutes. Whoever can't cope with it. So I believe if you have to take it easy and just. But I beg of you, with permission to our technician of tonight, Rab Menshi Shnaya, to please give me the allowance to continue on. I don't want to have to continue on this week with the same topic, so I'm going to make it quick and wrap it up in Mirz Hashem in 20 minutes. Mirz Hashem by 10 o'clock, it'll be over, hopefully, Bez Hashem. In the meantime, I'm saying L'chaim, and if anyone has to just take it easy, relax, and loosen your belts, put on your slippers, take yourself a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and relax, and hopefully it'll be enjoyable. And here comes to the Torah of the Rogatchover going. The Rogatchover going brings to our attention, and he says this in his Pirush ala Torah in Parshat Tazria. He continues on after he says, what seems to be implied, what's implied and obvious from this Rivit. excuse me, I want to share with you one more point. According to this Rogatchover, it's quite obvious. This is a very interesting thing. Listen to this. I mentioned a moment ago, I'm sorry, I have to repeat it. Right? The Rogatchover says that if the Rabbi says that you're like an excommunicate, and an excommunicate seems to have to separate from another excommunicate, therefore the no Metzora has to be with another Metzora, right? That's what we said, and that's the Chiddush that is Kemenuda. Let me just bring to your attention a gewaldige thing. The Radal, Rab David Luria, who didn't hear of the Radal, Rab David Luria? So he has a fascinating pirush on the Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer, we know, right? So if you have a standard Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer with the commentary of a standard one has the pirush of the Radal, so that's the way he's known. So in the back, there's hashmotas, there's emendations, additions to what he, to his glosses, to his notes. So in the back, the first edition of the Radal which was amended, was added to his commentary. He raises an interesting point. He talks about a menuda, and he has a tzorachiyun. He says, I'm unsure la halacha. What will be the halacha? We know that you have to distance yourself from an excommunicate in general. Someone who's excommunicated, you have to keep away midal adam shalom. He doesn't know. He says, tzorachiyun, if someone is excommunicated, and another person's excommunicated, if one excommunicate is to distance himself from the other excommunicate, he has a tzorachiyun and halacha. The Radal queries this question, and he says, maybe we can reconcile it from the din of a Metzorah. He says, listen, this is his shita. His shita is that a Metzorah is allowed to be together, right? You're allowed to be together with another Metzorah. He says there's no solitary confinement. One Metzorah is allowed to group with another Metzorah, like all the other Mefarshim we mentioned originally. By the way, I also want to mention the Pirush Melecha Shloima in Mesachta Kelim, in the Eser Kedusha saying, right? Which basically a lot of the dinim, which we mentioned today, I mentioned in the Mefarshim and in the Mishnah, in Mesechta Kelim, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Vav and Zayin, etc., where it speaks about the halachas of the, we'll talk about it soon. So I'll call upon him there. There's a Pirush of Melecha Shloimeh. The Melecha Shloimeh also understood on the commentary in the standard Vilna Varsha Mishnais. He too understood the Torah Kohanim to teach us that the Metzorah could definitely group together and be together. There's no solitary confinement. I'll call upon him. So the Radal also understood that the Metzorah can be together. So he says, if a Metzorah with Torah says you have to distance yourself, it's a din Torah. Nevertheless, the Torah allowed the Metzorah to be together. So this that you have to distance yourself from an excommunicate is only a din d'Rabbanan. The distance yourself for 4 amas. So surely 4 cubits. So surely it should be allowed. But he queries, he's unsure. But you see, the whole premise is only based on the Metzorah. But now, if we work the opposite, like the Rogatchover understands from the Ravid, that an excommunicate has to be distanced himself from another excommunicated, therefore it's understood from this Ravid that the Metzorah has to further himself, distance himself from another Metzorah. So that's the way it's understood from the Torah Kohanim according to the Ravid. Says the Rogatchover. Here he goes. The Rogatchover references a Gemara in Masechta Brachas Daf Nun Dalid and a Rashi in Menachos Daf Tzadikei. What's the Gemara Brachas in Daf Nun Dalid? We can't go into all the details. But the Gemara says, and listen, even though this is Agadata, it's a section of Agoda, so nevertheless, we know very well the sheet of the Rogatchover Gaon, and this is found in a tshuva of the Rogatchover Gaon, a response of the Rogatchover Gaon, which he told one of the Gedolei Yisrael, and it's published in the name of the Rogatchover Gaon, where the Rogatchover Gaon says that the chelik, even though we know ein lemeitin halachos mehagodos, nevertheless, if it's mentioned in the Haggadah, in the Shas Bavli, it's not a Haggadah for Medrash, but it's a Haggadah from the Midrashim, from the Medrash Rabbah, but it's a Haggadah found in the Halacha, and that is, in other words, in the Shas Bavli. So he says all of that is Halacha l'Moshe Misinai. In B'meila, we can definitely extrapolate halachas from it. In other words, it's found in this section. The fact is, anyway, we'll soon see. I'll mention that the Tzlach and all the other Mefarshim also learned this Gemara, la halacha. It's telling you, conveying a message in halacha. In other words, listen to what the Gemara says. The Gemara says there's a parsha. I can't go into the details, but we know very well in Seif Parshas Chukas. There's a known story in the Nachal Arnon, where there were 2 mountains from the Emoiroim, from the Amorites. Right, and when the Yidden traveled through the desert, they went into the valley. There were 2 big mountains, and the Amorites planned to trap the Yidden. They were going to shoot at them, etc., etc. So they hid. They hid in the mountains, right, and they dug trenches in the mountains. And Hashem made a miracle that the 2 mountains met, and therefore killed those Amorites which were in the mountains. So they weren't able to live to be able to shoot down the Jewish people who were traveling through that valley. through the valley, and there were two large mountains and a very deep valley. That's the Parsha. Parsha's Chukas talks about that Parsha that's called Nachal Arnon, and that's what the Gemara says. Whoever sees Mabros and Nachal Arnon, says the Gemara Masech the Brachas Daf Nun Daled, because a miracle occurred to the Jewish people at the time, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved them. So even though and because the Jewish people became aware of it, and so they gave praise to Hashem. So whoever passes that area has to give praise to Hashem. That's what the Gemara says in Masech the Brachas, page 54a. And the Gemara says, how did the Yidden become aware of it? They're traveling, and the miracle occurred behind their back, especially because the Jewish people were b'seich ha'onan, within covered and protected by the cloud of Hashem. So therefore, how are they able to know that this miracle occurred? So basically, the Gemara tells us, and this is based on the way I'm explaining the Gemara based on what the Chidush HaAgodas Marsha says, and also as the Rabbeinu Hananel explains it. It says in the Gemara as Vahev Besufa. The Pasuk quotes in the Sechta, the Pasuk says as Vahev Besufa. So Rashi has his take, and the meaning is Vahev Besufa. Vahev would mean, Rashi says Vahev is like Yahev. Besufa means the Yamsuf, that we have to give praise to Hashem, but the Yamsuf, that's Vahev Besufa, Yahev Besufa, give praise to Hashem, Besufa for Yamsuf. That's Rashi and Chumash and Parshas Chukas. I think it's a Chukas, right? You know where it is. Everybody knows where it is. Where is it? Let me just find it in order not to throw you off. I just want to make sure that it is in Chukas, right? Isn't it in Chukas? Yeah, it's in Chukas. You'll find it there. All good. Okay. Good. Yashikoyach. Okay. And then Rashi says, "Ves Nachal Arnon." We have to praise Hashem also for the miracle which occurred at Nachal Arnon, where the Yidden passed. As just mentioned, take out a Chumash Rashi and see what the Rashi explains what the miracle was. And Rashi basically bases his commentary on the Targum Onkelos, as the Chidush HaAgodas Marsha says. But the Gemara says a different thing. Vahev Besufa, says the Gemara, as Vahev, S Vahev, says the Gemara. Vav is a connecting Vav. S, Vahev. There were two fellows. There were two stooges. As S and Vahev and Hav. Nice names, yeah? S and Hav. S, Vahev. Two guys, S, Vahev. That's the way that Tzlach makes it very clear. In Marsha, it's not so clear. It's clear, but the Tzlach on the spot from the Rabbi Yehuda, he says very clear. There are two fellows they were named. One was named S, and one was named Hav, and it's already found in the commentary of Rabbeinu Hananel. Unfortunately, in the Vilna Shas, your standard Vilna Shas, there's no Rabbeinu Hananel on the margin of the Gemara, but it could be in your Shas Oiz V'Hodor. You have it, but I don't have a Shas Oiz V'Hodor. What should I do? But I saw the Art Scroll references Rabbeinu Hananel. But the fact is, Baruch Hashem, I have a Rabbeinu Hananel, which was published from the Ksavyat, from the manuscript, published by Vakshal, Maznaim Publishers at 12th Avenue. So Zoller Hab Marichas Yamim, he has a whole series on Rabbeinu Hananel for manuscript. It's all good. So Rabbeinu Hananel was there, and even though the Rabbeinu Hananel had been published earlier sometime and it's published in the Metzora by Dr. Levine in Metzora, but Dafka, this section in the Rabbeinu Hananel is published there. Nevertheless, this section is not found there. But Dafka in the Rabbeinu Hananel, in the edition of the Vakshal edition from the Maznaim Publishers, it's there, and he says clearly, he's the one who says it first. That's not where we understand the Gemara. There were two fellows, they were called S, another guy was called Hav. And the Gemara says there was an S and a Hav. Says the Gemara, there were two Metzorah, there were two fellows who had leprosies. They were leopard. They had leprosy. In others, they were Metzorah. Two Metzorah which went behind the Machne Yisrael. So, says the Marsha and the Tzlach, why are they going behind the Machne Yisrael? Because they are Metzorah. And we just learned that a Metzorah is not a loyatami as a Machne. They can't come and be part of the Machne Yisrael in the encampment. So they're trailing the Machne Yisrael. The back, they're trailing the Machne Yisrael. Now, interesting, like I said before, the Jewish people were b'seich ha'onan, so they couldn't see really what was going on around them. So therefore, the Marsha adds that they're not just training the Machne Yisrael, they're behind the back of the Machne Yisrael, the encampment of the rest of the Jewish people, but they're also chutz li'onan, says the Marsha. They're out of the onan, the cloud of glory which protected and covered the Jewish people. They were out of the Anan, Hashem, which covered the Jewish people, and therefore, because of the trailing the Machne Yisrael and the out of the Anan, therefore they were the ones, when the Jewish people passed that area, they looked back and they saw the blood and the limbs flowing, and they were the ones who revealed, so they realized what went on, the miracle Hashem made, and then says the Gemara, these two fellows, these Metzorah came, and they ended up telling the Jewish people about the miracle which just occurred behind their back. This was a secret, concealed miracle of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu made miracles, and therefore whoever passes that place has to praise Hashem. Okay, and now Who were these two Metzorahim? So the Yavetz Rav Yankiv says possibly one of these Pirushim is possibly they're from the Erev Rav, the Metzorahim, whatever they had, they were the Tzoras. The Rogatchover says, listen to what the Rogatchover says. And after he brings the Raiva that two Metzorahim shouldn't be together, he says, V'ayim brochas daf nun dalet. Look at Mesach the brochas daf nun dalet. What does the Gemara say in brochas daf nun dalet? You had two Metzorahim walking behind the Machli Yisrael. Those two Metzorahim are walking. They're walking. Why are they walking? They're walking 10 feet, 4 cubits apart. What does it say? They're walking. They're walking behind the Machli Yisrael. The Pashas, they're walking together. And the sequence of the Gemara is that they come. Pashtus, it means they come together and tell the Jewish people about the miracle. So it seems like they're together. They're together? What's going on there? What do you mean? They're together? They have to be together. How can they be together? Says the Rogatchover wants to prove from this that he says, V'ayin brochas daf nun dalet, from brochas daf nun dalet, from this Gemara, it would seem that yes, that they're able to be together. There's no solitary confinement, that they have to segregate themselves from another Metzorah. Two Metzorahim could be together. Just by the way, Derech Agav, the Slach has a gewaldige, phenomenal pshat on this Gemara, that why Rashi in the Chumash chose to learn like the Targum Onkelos, and the Gemara doesn't follow with the Targum Onkelos. The Gemara follows the Targum Yonis and Ben Uzziel follows with the Targum Onkelos, and he explains it's based on a Gemara in Masechta Menachos Daf Tzadikei. Sorry, it's too late. We got to move. We're moving quick now. Okay, Lefize, we have Baruch Hashem 10 minutes. L'chaim. Now, I would like to say as follows. The Rogatchover doesn't suffice with this. He says, V'ayim beroches daf nun dalet, which seems to say that according to the Shas, Metzorahim can group together. And he says, V'rashi menachos daf tzadik hey. Rashi menachos daf tzadik hey. What do we gain with this Rashi menachos daf tzadik hey? So the Rashi menachos daf tzadik hey, page 95a, so Rashi menachos references this Gemara. About the Metzorahim who are going and trailing the Machni Yisrael. They're out of the Machni Yisrael. And I wondered why Rashi, the Rogatchover Gaon, has to quote this Rashi. He's not just showing you, he knows all the Rashis in Shas, and therefore this Rashi quotes the Gemara. Listen to this. Rashi, the context of the Gemara in Menachos of the Tzadikei is to teach us as follows. Because we know this Gedushas HaMachnos, right? The Machnos are holy, right? And because there's a holiness, therefore, each one has to be, the different levels and grades of Tumah have to be banished from the different Machanot, like we mentioned before, without repeating ourselves, right? So therefore, from the Machne Shechina, from the Machne Levi, and to the Machne Yisrael, the Metzora has to be banished from all of them. Now, the Gemara says an interesting thing, says the Gemara Menachos Tzadikei. When the Yidden traveled, right, in the desert, so then they assembled the Mishkan. So there was no more Machne Shechina. The Machne Shechina didn't exist. You know why the Machne Shechina didn't exist? Because the curtains which established the encampment and the dwelling place for Hashem and the Shechina was disassembled, was taken apart. So there's no Machne Shechina. So the Gemara says a gewaldige thing. There's no Machne Shechina, so not a problem. Even though there's no Machne Shechina. So the Tomei mace is not banished from the Machne Shechina because there's just no Machne Shechina in existence. Nevertheless, the Zov and the Metzora are banished. In other words, the Tomei mess remains in the Machne Levi, even though he wasn't banished from the Machne Shechina, because it just didn't exist. But there is still Kedushas Machnes. In other words, just because it says, in other words, the Kodshim, the sacrificial meat, which was within the curtain area, becomes invalid. Because there's no more Azora, there's no more courtyard, there's no more section which is within the curtains, because we now disassembled, we took apart the curtains. So finished, it's non-existent now. So the Tomei mess is not banished, it's just he has nowhere to go, right? So he remains in the Machne Levi. But so I would think the same should apply for the Metzorah, that he can also hang around where he wants. And the same it goes, I would think that the Zov, the one who had emission from his bodily emission, can also hang around where he wants. So the Gemara is Mechadish, no. The Brisa teaches us that nevertheless the Metzorah and the Zov is Mishulach, has to be sent out of their Machanot. Says Rashi on the spot. Where do we see that the Metzora has to be sent out of their Machanot? From this Gemara. That even, what do we see from this Gemara? That's the Chiddush of this Gemara. Brochas Nun Dalet teaches us another halacha. that not just they have to be banished for the Machne Yisrael, the one who's afflicted with the tzaras, but when they're actually encamping, when we have all the machnas established, but even when they're traveling and there's no machne shchina, like we said. Nevertheless, we see from this Gemara, we're talking they were mahalech, they were journeying, they were traveling through the desert, and the machne shchina is non-existent. Nevertheless, the machnes, there's still a kedusha in the machanot of the Leviah and the Yisrael, and therefore each one has to be banished from his machaneh, from his encampment, and that's why the Metzorah have to be out of it. So Rashi references this Gemara to teach us, right, that the Mishnei Metzorah are walking and trailing the Machne Yisrael is because the din, the halacha tells us that they have to trail even though we're journeying, even though we're traveling. That's what the message of Masechta Menachos is. That's why Rashi says, that's when the Rogatchover says, look in Brochus, but then he says, look in Rashi Menachos of Tzaddik. And I believe with this, he also disputes what it says in the Pirush, Chazoi Nochem, one of the Gedolei Yisrael from hundreds of years ago, in his commentary, Chazoi Nochem on Masechta Kelim, where it speaks about the Esek Kedushas, the 10 levels of Kedusha from Eretz Yisrael, etc., in the Yerushalayim, the Kodesh, etc., the different Esek Kedushas. Take out the Perik, Masechta Kelim, Perik Aleph, Mishnah Hey, Vav, Zayin, etc. So he speaks about 10 levels and categories, 9 levels and categories of Kedusha, of sanctity. And there it says that the Machne Yisrael, right? The Machne Yisrael is Yerushalayim. Excuse me? It has the sanctity that we have to send out, right, the Metzorah from there. Okay, that's what it says there. So what is interesting, so the let me just say to you, the Pirush Chazoi Nochem, there on the spot, claims, listen to what he claims. He says, from this, that the Yidden, the two Metzorah, the Masechta Brachos, Daf Nun Dalet, were trailing the Machne Yisrael, can possibly be something it was just a comfort thing. It wasn't a halachic thing. It was just something they took upon themselves to keep the Metzorah away from them. But it could be, according to the halacha, there was no need for them to be out there. And now I don't want to give you the reasons what he says, but take out a Chazoi Nochem and Masechta Kelim. Now there's no time to allow you to discuss it. I'll call upon him, but it's very clear, according to the Rogatchover Gaon, based on this Rashi Masechta Menachos, that the Gemara is basically teaching us, based on this Rashi, based on Masechta Menachos, that when the Gemara says in Brachos they're going and trailing, it means al pi halacha they have to trail there. And then he brings another interesting Gemara. So we have a Gemara and a Rashi teaches us that what, according to the Shas, so even though according to the Torah, according to the Rabbi, it would seem we can't, but according to the Shas, it seems like there's a permit to have two Metzorah together. Then he brings another Gemara, Masechta Brachos, Daf Chaf Amud Aleph, another interesting Gemara. The Gemara there says that if a non-Jew is sitting in an opening between two rooms, so if there is tumah, if there is ritual impurity, something which is tumah in one of the rooms, so the tumah is transmitted into the other room if there's an opening between them. Says the Gemara. The Gemara says that if there is a goy sitting in the opening and blocking the opening, so to speak, because he's sitting there, says the Gemara, so therefore the thing the tumah, the impurity, it doesn't transmit from, it's like a shade, it blocks the tumah from being transmitted from one room to the other. And the Gemara says, why? The guy can stand up and walk off. And if he can stand up and walk off, so what's the problem? Why shouldn't it be able to be transmitted? It's not a permanent thing. So the Gemara says that he's tied up. Because he's tied up, there's no way he can move. And then the Gemara says, but listen to this. The Gemara says, he's a Metzorah who's tied up. If he's a Metzorah, no one's going to come near him. Of course, no one wants to. Everyone is going to distance themselves from the Metzorah. So if it's a goy, a Metzorah who's sitting there, so what? He's a Metzorah, so he's not going to, if they're going Metzorah, no one's going to come near him because it's infectious. Says the Gemara, what's the problem? Another Metzorah will come and undo it. Another Metzorah is going to come and undo it. Another Metzorah is going to come and undo it. So the Rogatchover is just says, V'ayim baba basra daf chaf amud aleph. He's just saying, look, he's hinting, so to speak, he's alluding to this Gemara where it seems to say, another Metzorah can meet up with another Metzorah and undo it. Sure, like I say, each one has its criteria. If he's a goy, etc., it's another Metzorah with him, etc. I'll call upon him, but we see at least that there's some kind of hint in the Shas, according to the Gemara in Masechta Bava Basra, Daf Chaf Amud Aleph, that there could be another Metzorah is coming to untie another Metzorah, so they're joining. Okay, the Gemara concludes that it's not talking about a Metzora, it's talking about someone else. Makes no difference, we're moving on. But mainly, the Ikar Rayas from the Rogatchover's Rayas in Masechta Brochas, he says this in his commentary on the Chumash, and in his on the Masechta Brochas, Daf Nandala, he also references that Rashi in Masechta Menachos Daf Tzadik Hey. So according to the Rogatchover, it seems from the Shas that it's okay, but it seems from the, at least according to his, what he references, but according to the Ravid in the Teres Koyanim, it seems like that it's problematic la halacha. And nevertheless, like I said, from the Ravid, from the Rambam, according to the way the Lubavitcher Rebbe learns, it would seem that no, the Rambam will see eye to eye with the Ravid. We're moving on. Now let's come to the Shaila Dr. Belbin raised, and Dr. Belbin raised a very good Shaila. It's an Eisen Kasha, and that is, it says Mefurish in the pasuk that that's the Haftarah of Parshat Metzora. I think you'd have to give me another 5-10 minutes. I'm sorry, but I'm going to finish. And that is as follows: in Parshat in the Haftarah of Parshat Metzora, which is found in the Book of Kings and Malachim. In Malachim Beis, it says that Arba Metzoroim, there were four Metzoroim, 4 people who were afflicted with Soras, was sitting at the entrance of Pesach HaShar, at the opening of the city of Shomron, of Samaria, call it what you like, Shomer, that's the way the English translates it in the Art Scroll. Okay, they're sitting in Shomron. Okay, they're sitting in the Pesach Shar of Shomron. So listen to this. So Rabbi Kiva Eger, take out our Rabbi Kiva Eger, and Rabbi Kiva Eger asks as follows. Let me tell you. The Mishnah says, let me just introduce to you what it says. The Mishnah says in Masechta Kelim that just like we mentioned that there are 3 encampments in the desert, the Machne Shechina, the Machne Levi, and the Machne Yisrael. Now this applies when Yidden entered Eretz Yisrael and the Beis HaMikdash was built. So then the halacha is as follows, that there still remains this criteria of Machne Shechina and Machne Levi and Machne Yisrael. And that is the whole of Jerusalem, the whole of Yerushalayim, HaKodesh, right? From the Pesach Yerushalayim to the Pesach Harabais, to the opening, the entrance to the Yerushalayim, and the opening to the Harabais, to the Temple Mount, that is regarded as the Machne Yisrael, and that's Kedushas Machne Yisrael. The opening, the Pesach Harabais to the Pesach HaAzorah, Shar Nikoner, Pesach HaAzorah, the opening of the Temple Mount, and to enter the Temple Mount, and the opening of the Azorah, the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, that is regarded as the Machne Levi. This is what the Rambam details for us. That's the Mishnah. The Mishnah in Masechta, the Mishnah in Masechta Kelim, it's the Rambam. Tosefta in Kelim, and the Rambam in Hilchas Beis HaBchira, Perik Zayin, he details all of these things. You'll find it all there. And then he goes on to say, and then the Mishnah goes on to say, and then the Machne Shechina is from the Pesach HaAzorah, from the opening of the Azorah, in other words, the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, that's the Machne Shechina. Now, this is in relation to the Beis HaMikdash. Then the halacha is, the Mishnah tells us that all the cities in Yerushalayim, which have a chayma, which are walled cities, so the din is that they have a kedusha of Yerushalayim. They have a kedusha of a Machne Yisrael. All the walled cities throughout Eretz Yisrael, according to the Rambam, it's only Eretz Yisrael, whatever. So all the walled cities in Eretz Yisrael, that's the way the Rambam writes it. It was Tumas Soras. We mentioned the halacha before. All the walled cities. I'll just read it for you again, just so you should hear it. Let me just read it quickly. The Rambam says, Eretz Yisrael, din Metzora sheyil and Moshev levado chutz leir shenem chutz lamachna meshavei v'dovar zeh ba'ayoros hamukafos chayme be'eretz Yisrael bilvad. So the halach is, and that's what the Mishnah tells us, that any walled city is regarded as Machne Yisrael, and just as the Metzora, right, the one who is afflicted with Tzaras has to keep out of the Machne Yisrael in the desert. He has to keep out of Yerushalayim in Eretz Yisrael. He also has to keep out of any city which is a walled city. So listen, these are the rules and these are the halachas. Just interestingly, the Rambam paskins befurish in Hilchas Bias Migdosh. In Hilchas Bias Migdosh, the Rambam paskins in Perek Gimel that in relation to the Yerushalayim, if he enters Yerushalayim, or if he enters the Machne Yisrael, the Metzora, or all the others, so he's over belav. It says, Lo yovu ala Machne, don't come into the Machne. But he says when it comes to the Ayoros HaMekofis Chayme, he doesn't mention the lav. He says only because it says Bodod Yeshev, so there's only a positive which says he has to remain out there, but it doesn't say he shouldn't enter the Machne. This is a specific, so there's a certain leniency in the penalty if he enters a city which is a surrounded wall in Eretz Yisrael. Nevertheless, it has a Kedusha of Machne Yisrael. And interestingly, in the Zohar Rakia, he says we don't find anywhere mentioned. The Zohar from the Rashbats, we don't find anywhere mentioned that we should count this Pasuk Bodod Yeshev, that it should be confined alone in the positive mitzvahs. And he says, he queries, you won't find it, but the Rogatchover in his notes and the glosses on the Zohar Rakia, he brings to our attention that it happens to be that there's a Sefer HaMitzvahs LaRamban in the Mitzvah Yud Daled, where there he quotes, there he has a list of mitzvahs which the Rambam omitted, in other words, forgot, so to speak, in the eyes of the Ramban, that the Rambam, Maimonides, didn't quote, record in the 613 mitzvahs. So the Ramban in Mitzvah Yud Daled, in the positive mitzvahs, he says, yes, mitzvah of Bodod Yeshev is counted as a positive mitzvah. So the Rogatchover references this Ramban that the Zohar Rakia seemingly didn't notice it. I'll call upon him. So that's the Bodod Yeshev, which relates not just to all the Metzorah in all the areas of Machne Yisrael, wherever, either desert or Yerushalayim, but also applies to the Ayoris HaMekofis Choyma. Okay, so listen now, on the gloss of the Mishnayos, in Mishnayos Kalim, your standard Vilna Mishnayos, Vilna Varsha Mishnayos, whatever it is, in Perik Aleph Mishnah Zayin, says the Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Rabbi Akiva Eiger says as follows, Shoal ni Chacham Echad. A Chacham Echad asked me a question. What's the question the Chacham Echad asked him? Listen. But before, I forgot, there's just one major point which I have to introduce to you. When the Mishnah tells us the halacha is that even cities which are with walled cities have a sanctity of Yerushalayim, right? And therefore, a Metzorah is not allowed to enter those cities. The Rash Mishans, Rab Shamshon Mishans, in his commentary on Masechta Kelim, tells us that what the wall has to exist, Mimais Yehoshua bin Nun. It's not good enough that it's a walled city, which is a newly built city, a newly built wall. But if it's a city which has been established from the days of Yehoshua ben Nun, so it was a walled city from then, so therefore based on this Sifri in Parshas Bamidbar, so Yehoshua sanctified all those cities. And B'meila, therefore, just like the din by Botei Ori Chayma, the specific halachas in Hilchas Shemitah B'Yovel, by Botei Ori Chayma, the rule is that it has to be from the days, walled cities from the days of Yehoshua ben Nun. So the same applies for that we send out a Metzorah from a walled city, but it has to be a walled city from the days of the time of Yehoshua ben Nun. Okay, so that's a principle which, even though I haven't found it, I haven't seen. Not Rashi should record it, and not it doesn't seem to be recorded in the Rashi, and it doesn't seem to. The Bartanura definitely records it in the Mishnah. The Bartanura and the Tosfos to record this Rash Mishans, but I don't seem to see it in the Rambam in his commentary, nor the Rambam of the Sefer in the Mishnah Torah. It's not there, but nevertheless, the Meforshei Rambam, the Mishnah Lamelech in Hilchos Tumas Soras, and the Marikorkus in Hilchos Beis Abchira reference this Rash Mishan. So everybody seems to learn that we take this for granted, that if it's a city which is walled, it has to be a city which is walled from the days of Yehoshua ben Nun. But listen to this. Here comes the question of this Chacham who asked Rabbi Akiva Eiger a Shaila. What was the Shaila? He says as follows. It says before the Pasuk in Melachim, and that is a capital Melachim Beis, Pasuk Parsha Zayin, Pasuk Gimel. It says V'arbo Anoshim Hoyu Mitzoroim Pesach Hashar. There were four men who were lepers at the city gate, and they say, each one says to the other, "What are we sitting here until we die?" That's what the pasuk says. So we're going to address a couple of things here. We're going to address the kasha of the Chacham who asked Rabbi Akiva Eiger, and then we're going to address Dr. Belbin's question. Here comes the question. The Rashi says, Rashi Milon Godel Mi Rashi is the Rabbon Shel Yisrael, right? He's the Mefarish. Rashi says the Radak has a different wording, not as precise as Rashi's. We're going to mention it later. But let's go. Rashi says, Pesach Hashar. Why are they sitting at the gateway of the city, but they're not in the city? Says Rashi. Why? Because it says in the pasuk, Bodod Yeshev Mechutz LaMachana Meishavai. Because the pasuk of Tazria says they have to be confined and they have to be out of the machana. So therefore, they can't come into the city of Shomron, right? That's why they're out of the city. Asks this Chacham to Rabbi Akiva Eiger. You know who built the city? If you open up your Tanakh, also in the Sefer Melach in Kapitel Aleph, it says clearly who built the city. It says in the pasuk, I'm going to read it for you, Melach and Aleph, pasuk Chav Dalet. It says as follows: Vayiken es ha'or Shoimron, Me'es. We're talking about Omri. There was a Melech Yehuda and a Melech Yisrael, right? The breakaway, the rebels who broke away from the Melech Yehuda. So there were the Melech Yisrael for the Yisrael, the Shvatim broke away. So therefore, the 10 Shvatim, whatever, the Melech Yisrael. So the Melech Yisrael at the time was Omri. And I don't mean Omri Sharon, Arik Sharon's son, right? There's an Omri Sharon. We don't hear about him any longer. But there was a time they spoke all about him now. There was a king called Omri, and he had a son Achav, and he was the Melech Yisrael at the time. He was quite wicked, and the Pasuk describes him as wicked as Yerovam ben Nevat, and worse, and his son was even worse, etc., etc. But listen, the Pasuk says, "Vayikin es har shemron." He bought the har shemron eish shemer b'kikraim kesef. Vayiven es har vayikra shem har shabon al shem shemer adoni har shemer. I'm going to read it for you on the Yard Scroll. The Yard Scroll, Malachim Kings. Okay, Omer. Sorry. Let me read it for you. Verse 23. Yeah. Omri became king over Israel. He bought the mountain of Samaria, Shemerin, from Shemer for 2 talents of silver, and he built up the mountain, and he called the name of the city that he built after Shemer, the Lord of the mountain of Samaria. Okay, so it says Mefurish in the Pasuk that who built the city of Shemerin? Who built it? Omri. You bet he was so much later than Yehoshua, right? Because Yehoshua sanctified the cities, which are walled cities, when he entered Eretz Yisrael. We're talking about much later, I'll call upon him. So Omri built the city. Omri built the city. So if Omri built a city, it is a walled city, and that's where they're sitting Pesach Ashar at the entrance of the city. They're not in the city. That's where the Metzorah don't go into the city. But if that's the case, it's not a walled city. Yehoshua ben Nun. And if it's not a walled city from the days of Yehoshua, why do they have to be out of the city? They could have been in the city. That's what they asked Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Rabbi Akiva Eiger answers them as follows. Rabbi Akiva Eiger says, that's why if you'll take a good look and a careful look at the Targum Yonason in Melachim, I'm not going to go to the details, but that's what he says. If you'll read in the Targum Yonason in Melachim Aleph, in that pasuk where it says that he bought that mountain and that area and built up the city, he says as follows. He says, according to the Targum Yonason, he says the reason the Targum Yonason does that is because he was also bothered with this question. And therefore, the Targum Yonason, according to the Rabbi Akiva Eiger's understanding of this Targum, in this pasuk is that Omri didn't actually buy the city. There was already a kikar there. There was already a city there. It was already there, but it needed renovation. It had to be built up. It had to be rebuilt. So the pasuk, according to the Targum, means not he built the city initially. The city had been there from before. He just rebuilt it. And that's what the pasuk is conveying. Okay? But Mela says, Rabbi Akiva Eiger, what's the problem? We can still learn that this city was actually a city which was already built was there in existence from the days of Yehoshua. So therefore the walls around it was Mimais Yehoshua ben Nun, and the Mela therefore. The Balder was Mimais Yehoshua ben Nun. That's why, as Metzorah, they can't enter the city, and that's why they're out of the city. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Here we go. And we're going to come closer to the Shraila of Dr. Belvin. And please, so I'm going to finish. I'm wrapping it up. It's going to take another 5-10 minutes. I keep on telling you the same thing. But Baruch Hashem, we're muching sich in Torah, b'chaymer b'lveinin. B'chaymer da kal v'chaymer b'lveinin da lieben hilchase. And we wird ausgemuchet and learning. All those who have to go to work tomorrow and all those who want to sleep good and comfortably is muchet sich aus and learning. The Rebbe will give you should really have a shachafta v'arvish nasecha. You'll have pleasant, holy, pure dreams, and you'll have you'll be so knocked out. And you'll be so bamboozled and zapped that you'll have a good night's sleep. Hoffentlich. L'chaim. I'm coming. So, here we go. So comes the Harav Ettlinger, the Bavusta Orach Laner, and the Sharat Teshuvas Binyan Sin, and Chelik Beisim and Samach, and he says, I'm very surprised. Rabbi Akiva Eiger's Pekiyas, he knows Kol HaTorah, right? Pekiyas. So how is it that he didn't notice on Mefurish Gemara? What he's saying is Mefurish against the Gemara. The Gemara clearly says in Masechta Sanhedrin Daf Kuf Beis, says the Gemara as follows. Listen to what the Gemara says. The Gemara says the reason why Omri, who was a Melech Yisrael, even though he was so wicked, and therefore he should have faced what happened, should have happened to him. The reason why he ended up meriting that he should end up being a king. And the Marsha explains, even though he was a king at the time, when he did it, like we'll soon say, right? We mentioned already. But the reason that he was blessed, that the sovereignty, the inyan of Malchus should continue on with his descendants. The reason why? So B'meila, why? Says the Gemara, because, even though he was so wicked, was because he, Hoisif, says the Gemara, says the Binyan Sin. It says clearly because Hoisif, he was Moisif, he added the city onto Eretz Yisrael. And that's the city of Shomron. Vivaldi added the city. So it's very clear that it's not just been there and he rebuilt it and renovated it, says the Binyan Sin. It's clear that he added it. And then he says, so even if you're going to learn the Targum, that the Targum doesn't seem to agree with the Gemara, but you're going to have to reconcile this Chacham's question according to the Gemara. Because the Gemara seems to say very clearly that Hoisif, it wasn't just renovated. You get it? So listen to what the Binyan Sian answers. And his answer is Lemaisa, also repeated. The Meshech Chochmah says it so Mefurish also at the end of Parshas Metzora on the Haftarah, and also on the Bavuster Sefer Mikor Baruch Chelik Beis Mechav Beis, from one of the Gdolei Lita who was never murdered by the Nazis, Yimach Shmom, Tovshin Aleph. So he has a very choshev alomdish sefer Mikor Baruch Shalas Utshuvas Chidushim to Pulim, etc. He says the same thing Mikor Baruch Chelik Beis Mechav Beis. So these Mefarshim all say as follows. Listen to what they say. They say that there's no question, the Kashbis Chacham Echad Hake is right, that really the Shomron didn't have no Kedusha of the Machna, because he didn't have a walled city, Yehoshua ben Nun. Omri actually built it, he was Moisiv, he extended Eretz Yisrael, he added the city. If so, why are they out of the city? So he says as follows, the reason why he's out of the city is only because, and this is what the Binyan Sian says based on a Yalkut, because the Malchei Yisrael wanted to do a replica of the Malchei Beis David in Yerushalayim. The kings of Judah, their capital was Yerushalayim. So the Malchei Yisrael wanted to be identical to them, so therefore they made Shomron their capital. And therefore they introduced all the same guidelines Yerushalayim has, the same guidelines Shomron should have. So being that Omri was the Melech of Shomron, the Melech Yisrael at the time, so therefore, even though he was the one who built Shomron, but the guidelines of Shomron had to have the same guidelines because they wanted it should be like the Yerushalayim. And therefore, even though it doesn't have a Kedusha of the Machne, and really halachically, the Metzorah could be in the city, nevertheless, they was restricted from the city only because it should be like Yerushalayim, but really halachically it was kosher for them to be in the city. This is the way it is explained in these Mefarshim I mentioned before. And that's why they're sitting out of the city, only because of that reason. In other words, and like other Mefarshim want to say, it's only because, etc. Okay, all good. L'maisa b'poil, I want to just say that this teretz is not good enough for Rabbi Akiva Eiger, because the Chacham asked the Shaila based on Rashi. If you take out the Rashi, it's very clear that the Rabbi Akiva Eiger is trying to reconcile the Rashi. The Rashi makes it very clear that the reason why they're sitting out there is because it's halachically mandated for them to sit out there. Like we said before, the lashon of the pasuk was V'arba Metzoroim. What was the lashon? Oh, Tazria. So where is it? You remember what it said there? What was the lashon of the pasuk? V'arba Metzoroim. What did I lose the place? So V'arba Metzoroim. Oh, V'arba Anoshim Hoi Metzoroim Pesach Hashar. Rashi says clearly. Why are they sitting Pesach Hashar? Because it says in the pasuk. According to Rashi, it doesn't come out that it's something external because they want to replica Yerushalayim. It comes out al pidin, you have to be out there. And that's where Rabbi Akiva Eiger is reconciling this Rashi. Their pshat, you can possibly say, according to the Radak, because if you look in the Radak says, look, it's like the way in the mode of the Metzorah to be out of the city. Like it says, you get it? In the Radak, maybe you can say all their pirushim. But I'm afraid you can't say their pirush in Pirush Rashi. Therefore, we still remain with the shaila of the Rabbi Akiva Eiger, and therefore the shaila is taka, why they're sitting out of the city, and we have to come on to his teretz. That in essence, that it was a city from the days of Yehoshua ben Nun, and that's why they're sitting out of the city halachically. According to them, they're sitting out there, shalak al derech halach. And I just want to go back to the shaila of Dr. Belvin, and that is, now if they're sitting out there, but really the halacha is not mandating them to sit out there, so then, according to that, it's not so bad that the four Metzoroim sitting together, you can reconcile the shaila. We can say, really, maybe la halacha, you can't have 4 Metzorah together according to the Shittas HaRavid, according to the Torah's Kohanim, right? But you have a problem with the Mefurish Pasuk. So true, the Pasuk seems to say they're sitting together, but if we say, if Ladas Rashi, you're right, it's a good question, because Rashi seems to say, halachically, they're sitting out there. Rabbi Kiva learns that Menadin, they're sitting out there, like he explains. But according to all these Pirushim, possibly we can say they're just sitting out there, so just like Menadin, they don't have to sit out there, like they're can fit it to the words of the Radak. So maybe Menadin, they were lenient in the sense that all 4 are grouped together, not so bad. That's some way of getting out of it. I think it's not a good enough way, and therefore we're going to reconcile it in a better way soon in a moment. Okay, that's the gang. By the way, the Shuvas Mekar Baruch wants to explain also this union. That's why it says that they're sitting Pesach Hashar. They're sitting in the gateway. And also the Meshech Chochmah, Rabbi Simcha says the same thing, because they wanted to identify with Yerushalayim. So just like the Gemara says in Masechta Pesachim Daf Pehei, says the Gemara, I think it's Pehei or Pevav, says the Gemara that even though the Yerushalayim has a Kedusha and the Metzorah have to be out of the city of Yerushalayim, but the gateways they didn't sanctify with the Kedusha of Yerushalayim in order for the Metzorah not to leave, because they can't be in the city, but they should be at least in some way contacted to the city. So there was an allowance given that they should be in the gateway of the city, right, in the shar of the city. And the shar is not consecrated B'Kedushas Yerushalayim, so there's a permit. So the same applies for the city of Shomron. They didn't either consecrate the gateways. It didn't have to be more sanctified, didn't have to have more sanctity than Yerushalayim. Therefore, the Pesach Hashar, the Metzorah were allowed, according to their take, because Menadin, they don't really have to, they can be in the city. They're just out there to duplicate, to replicate Yerushalayim. So therefore, they can still also allow to be in the Pesach Hashar, in the Shar, in the gateway, because the gateway doesn't have a sanctity in Yerushalayim, so it surely doesn't have the sanctity in this case. Anyway, this is their take, but I just said, according to Rabbi Kiva, we can't accept the whole gang. And I want to therefore go and present to you also what Rabbi Yonis Neibshitz says. Rabbi Yonis Neibshitz has a different way to reconcile it, and this is as follows, an interesting take. He says as follows, and that's found in the Sefer Avos Yonis with the Rebbe Rabbi Yonason. But the Rebbe Rabbi Yonason, in his Pirush on the Haftarahs in Parshas Metzora, he says a gewaltige, very interesting pshat. Take a look. Rashi says, Varbo Anoshim. Who are these 4 people who are sitting there who had leprosy, afflicted with leprosy? Rashi says they were Gehazi Ubonov. Gehazi and Bonov. Gehazi was like the Shamash of Elisha Hanavi, right? And with his sons, he had 3 sons. And Rashi, it's not the mocker, that it was Gehazi Ubonov. There are 2 Gemaras. There's the Gemara Masechta Sanhedrin, Daf Kuf Zayin. The Gemara says Mefurish, it's Gehazi and his 3 sons. These are the 4 people. And also the Gemara in Seita Daf Mem Zayin also says the same thing as the Gemara in Sanhedrin, but the Ikar Sugi is in Sanhedrin, where the Gemara speaks about Elisha, etc., etc. Now, who was Gehazi Ubonov? What was the issue? So if you take out a Tanakh Malachim, in the Sefer Malachim, right before this parsha, it speaks about Naaman. Naaman was a Goyish king, a Goyish general, a Goyish leader, right? And he had Soras. He had Soras. He was afflicted with what? With this Soras sickness, right? And Elisha is going to do some miraculous thing. Elisha Hanavi gives him this wonderful eitzah, and he ends up dipping, etc., etc., and he was cleansed from the tzaras, and he was healed. That's Elisha. And if you remember Birchas Koyanim, Yidden who are zoicha to have Birchas Koyanim, and they say the Rabbeinu Shalom, so it says Hashem should send us a refuah, uchenamon mitzaratoi. That was the Elisha's mess, the miracle, which went via Elisha, that Naaman was healed from his saras. We say that in the Rabbeinu Shalom, halavai, we should all be zeichet to be able to have, the Koyanim should be able to bless us, and we should have to say the Rabbeinu Shalom, and we should be able to say, Mitzrichim refuah, refaim, kinama mitzaratoi, halavai, ot, no, the Rebbe should have to shikin the Yeshua. So that's an Nama mitzaratoi. Oh, but because Gehazi didn't act accordingly, and he ends up taking things which Elisha told him not to, and he ends up taking such credit. He ends up receiving credit from Naaman, so therefore Elisha, based on different reasons, he ends up cursing, he ends up cursing Gehazi. And he ends up cursing Gehazi that the illness, the tzaras, which Naaman had, should be infectious upon Nebuch, upon Gehazi, and all of them, and forever, for eternity, that he, Gehazi, and his descendants should have this saras. That's what the story of the Melachim tells us, preceding the story of the Arba Anoshim Hay Metzorah. So the 4 Anoshim were sitting there, Gechazi Ubanav, after they were cursed. By who? By Elisha. Says, listen to what the Rabbi Yonason says. Rabbi Yonason asks the same shaila which this Chacham asked Rabbi Akiva Eiger. And that is, why can't these fellows enter the city in the Metzora? Why can't they enter the city of Shomron? Shomron wasn't a city which was walled from the days of Yehoshua, so therefore it didn't have a sanctity of the walled city. If it doesn't have a sanctity of the walled city, so the Metzorah can enter the city. Why do they have to be out of the city? Asks the Rabbi Yonason, and he answers. The Gemara intended to answer this question by telling us that who are the fellows who were sitting out of the city? You know who they were? They were Gechazi Ubanov, says the Rabbi Yonason. Why is it important for Rabbi Yochanan to tell us in Masechta Sotah and Masechta Sanhedrin that the fellows, the 4 Metzorahim, are Gechazi Ubanov? So the Gemara says the Rabbi Yonason, he wants to explain for us why did they have to sit out of the city. Says the Rabbi Yonason as follows: Min Hadin, they didn't have to be in the city. Why? Because it's not a city which is Yehoshua ben Nun, a walled city, Yehoshua ben Nun. Why were they out of the city? Because they're Metzorahim, who are the Gechazi Ubanov. Listen to what he says. He says, when a Yid is afflicted with Saras, so then it's only Tameh. It's not infectious. But when a Goy is afflicted with Saras, then it's infectious. That's what Rabbi Yonis Neibshit says. B'meila, this Saras, these 4 Gechazi Ubanov were Yidden. But they were afflicted with Saras from Naaman, who was a Goy. The Mele, he says, all the properties of the Tzaras of Naaman, based on Elisha's curse, carried over to Gechazi and Bonam and his sons. The Mele, therefore, as follows: Min Adin, if they would have had this affliction of leprosy, not mitzad the curse. So then they could have been in the city, because Min Adin, there's no problem. Why Min Adin, there's no problem? Because there's no problem of tumah. But being that they were afflicted with this leprosy based on the curse, so they're cursed with a goyish illness, and that's why it's called illness. It's only an illness by the goy, not an illness by a yid. Therefore, the people of the city didn't want them have there. They didn't want them have them there. They knew that their illness, their tzaras, is an illness, and it's infectious, and therefore it's contagious. So they were thrown out of the city by the people. And people that were thrown out of the city by the people, they were sitting out of the city. And that's, the Gemara teaches us, that's why they're out of the city. Because it's Gechazi Ubanov. So it's not a real Jewish leprosy. It's not a real Jewish nega. It is an illness. It's from the goy. So it's not just tamei, which in this case, it shouldn't be a problem. It's also infectious. The people in the city says, get out of here quickly. You have to confine them. If they have to be confined, they're out of the city. So that's why they're out of the city. But then they could have been in the city, even according to the Rabbi Yonason. Again, this is another nice, interesting shot. According to the Rogatchover Gaon, that the 4, therefore, just for the same reason, if we talk as they're not emesim Metzorah al pi Torah. So again, according to the Rogatchover Gaon, based on the Rivit, there's also no problem why it says Rabba and Noshim were together. They can be together. What's the problem? Because they're truly not Metzorah. Again, this is all good, but not according to Rashi and Rabbi Akiva Eiger. In other words, again, Rashi learns Mefurish. In other words, he says it's Befedish, a walled city, and based on the Targum, Yonason, Rashi sees to learn that it's Minadin, the Metzorahim, and the Minadin Metzorahim. If so, why are they out of the city? So you're going to have to say what it says, that it was a walled city. If that's the case, and they're truly Metzorahim, how are they grouped together as 4? So listen, an interesting thing. The Tzavrei Sholol, the Chidah, here there are 2 biurim for this. Like I said, the Rogatchover also discusses it. There's a Rogatchover and the Haftorah. The Rogatchover and the Haftorah and Parshat Metzora also addresses it, and he actually brings a Yerushalmi to prove Rabbi Akiva Eiger's point. It doesn't bring Rabbi Akiva Eiger. He says, according to the Yerushalmi, it was a walled city. Yehoshua Benin, there's a discussion about that, but he brings a raya from Yerushalmi in Megillah. It was a walled city from Yehoshua Benin. He learns that there are emesim Metzorahim al pidin. Nevertheless, it doesn't have a gedushas. They're actually allowed to be in the city. He brings a Taisvus in Ksubis, where the Taisvus in Ksubis says, and it's also quoted in the Achronim on the Rambam, Mefarshei Rambam, that it's Ruba Akum, the majority of the city, even though it's a walled city, Yehoshua Benin. So then the Kedusha lapses. The Kedusha is released, So he says, really, Al-Pidin, they couldn't have been in the city. So he has a discussion there on that after. We're not going to go there at this point. But I'm going to mention to you two reconciliations for the Rogatchover, the Rogatchover, and the Rivit. This is based, one Pirush is based on the Tzavri Shol on the Chidah. Now, the Chidah brings this from Chachmei Ashkenaz. Doesn't mention who they are. Chidah himself is of the opinion, and he quotes actually this Rabbi Avram Zutra we mentioned originally, that according to the Teres Kohanim Al-Pidin, all the Metzorah can be together. He has no problem with the Pasuk Barbo Anoshim Hoyu Metzorah Pesach Hashar. Right? He has no problem with that. I didn't mention it through the discussion, I think. The Ram, Rabbi Mizrahi actually quotes this to prove that there's a din of Metzorah out of the city, and he brings Dafka this pasuk. So it seems Rabbi Mizrahi also learns that Al-Pi Din, they have to be out there. So we have Rabbi Kiva Eger, we have Rabbi Mefurish Rashi, we have Rabbi Mizrahi. But even though, so nevertheless, the Chidah, all the other Mefarshim learn that many Metzorah can be together, even though they're emesim Metzorah Al-Pi Din. He says, if so, what's going on there? Listen to what he says. He says, Bonov. He says, when is there a halacha? Now, listen to what he says, what the Chachmei Ashkenaz says. Nevertheless, he brings Chachmei Ashkenaz. Chachmei Ashkenaz are under the impression, I think he brings the B'Shem Chachmei Ashkenaz, it's a Sefer Tzavrei Sholol from the, Tzavrei Sholol from the Chidah and the Haftarah. And he brings, and he says as follows, Chachmei Ashkenaz said, really, even Metzorah can't be together. It's all like based on this Rivit, Mistam, and the Teres Kohanim. You're not allowed to be together. Why we have 4 Metzorah together? He says, but when must they be? Not just confined, but they have to be solitary confinement, right? And each Metzorah has to be confined from the other, at least, like we say, if they're menuda, they have to be 4 cubits away from each other. They can't be together. That's only by people who are truly Metzorah because of their sin. They need atonement for their sin. So therefore, we have them in solitary confinement, and then they're sitting all alone, and they get the message because they were gossipers, and they have to be atoned. You have to be segregated from the masses. You have to be segregated from your wife. You have to be segregated from everybody, and therefore you have to be segregated even from other Metzorah, like we explained before, and that's why the solitary confinement. But says the Tzavrei Sholol B'Shem Chachmei Ashkenaz, when the whole Tzoras is only based on a curse, so it's not their sin. It's coming from a curse, and it's a thing they can never get rid of. He says, when there's solitary confinement, that will bring him to tshuva. But when is that? If you'll do tshuva and repent, so that's a process of the healing, and you'll be healed, like the Torah says, you'll be healed from the tzoras. But this is a type of tzoras which they will never be healed from, because it's a curse from Elisha, and Elisha says they will be cursed forever. Forever. So even if it's solitary confinement, they can do all the tshuva they want. There's no way this will leave them. They will always be remained as Metzorah. If they'll always remain as Metzorah, the tzoras, they will always be afflicted with the tzoras. So according to that, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to be together. This is what the Tzavrei Sholol says, which actually, if we'll accept this, we can still learn like Rashi, that Minadin, they're Metzorah. Minadin, they also have to be separated, but these are a different category of Metzorah. Metzorah, which will forever be Metzorah, therefore the halacha. But then you're going to have to say that this halacha is based on the reason of doing tshuva and their atonement and their, so to speak, and their cheshbon nefesh. So again, the question is if it's a simple answer. Let me share with you another interesting answer. And I was always, so to speak, amazed by what the Lubavitcher Rebbe Schusi Yogan Aleinu says. And what's interesting, I haven't seen any source for it or found anywhere where it's brought, but the Rebbe says it, and it could be its original, but I haven't, like I say, searched sufficiently for it. After he brings the Rivit in his gloss, you look at the Sichas, volume 22, page 74, in the Ha'ara number 49, and he brings all the Shita of the Rogatchover and the Rivit that the Metzorah can't either be joined together. And then he brings the Rogatchover who says that yes, from the Shas it would seem that they can bring together. Then the Rebbe raises this question of the Arba Metzorah. The Rebbe says, Re'ei gam melochem beis, seemingly it would seem from this Haftarah, like we mentioned till now, it says Arba anoshim hoy Metzorah. So it's a mefurish pasuk that they're together. So we mentioned all the different reconciliations, etc. And listen to what the Rebbe says. Hello, and I believe he says it with such a pashtus. In other words, I don't think the chiddush is in the pashtus. That's how novel this terrace of what the Rebbe is, and this also reconciles us for us, like in the mode of the other mefarshim. Why taka is the important for the Gemara to say that they are gechazi ubonov? So the Rebbe is highlighting, the Gemara is explaining they were gechazi ubonov. Doesn't bring the whole length in the arichas. Listen to what the Rebbe says. From there, you can't raise any points against the Rivit and the Teres Kohanim. You know why? Because they were Gechazi Ubonov, says the Gemara. Was in the Geye? Zog der Rebbe, Ela Shezeu Gechazi Ubonov. Shemechuyovim lechabdoi v'chulu. Moira. Metzorah, strangers, people who have no relationship with each other, right? And I want to just bring to your attention, it's like what's going on today in the disease. They say in the whole family, if they're the close relationship, next to kin, whatever, the same families, you can all be together. That's not such a problem, right? But if they're strangers, you can't meet up, 2, 9, this, that, whatever all the numbers are. The Rebbe says, the Gemara says, true Metzorah can be together, right? Al Pidin, according to Rashi, like Rick Lager says, and even in the city of Shomron. And the only reason they're in the Shar is only because it wasn't Kodesh, because it's Yerushalayim, like the Shar Yerushalayim is not Kodesh. Rogatchover. What are the Arba Metzorah? It's Gechazi Ubanav. They have to be with their father, because they're Mechuyiv L'chabdoi. Kabed es avicha v'esimecha is an esim in Torah. And if it's an esim in Torah, this is a droshas Chazal. Now the Rebbe learns bepashtus that even though we will learn that the halacha, the Gemara, this extrapolation, these psukim are alluding, and we extrapolate from them that the Metzorah have to be separate. Nevertheless, the esav kibud av pushes it off. Or is materit, exactly, the Rebbe doesn't elaborate, it just says it's with a pashtus, and like I said, it could be it's gor poshut. I don't think one even has to examine or research halachas of kibbutz avahim, or research all the halachas of Metzorah, etc., based on the Rogatchover and the Rabbi, but the Rebbe says it's with a pashtus, and that is, being, that's what the Gemara is saying, Vibald is bonov, b'chuyavim l'chabdoi, and once you're a Metzorah already, so even though the halacha says everybody has to be in solitary confinement, but the sons have to be with their father. So even though the halacha says that it has to be bodod levadoi, but mitzat kibud av, they have to be together because the sons have to look after the father. Therefore, there's a permission to be together. That's the reconciliation for Pirush Rashi, and based on the sheet of Rabbi Kiva Eger, that is taken min adinda Metzorah, even in the city of Shomron. I would like to conclude now, and I'm Baruch Hashem concluding, L'chaim v'levrocha, the Eibusher should give that all the halachas which we went through, and I mutched you, and we mutched, and we gekvetched, and geret, and gemutched, is halavai was a mutchenish, and we were taka zoiche, that halavai was zoiche, that the bechaymer will vein the bechaymer, the kal bechaymer, believing dalim hilchase, that all the terrorists with Tzoras, that if God forbid it has to be contagious, and if God forbid it has to be infectious, and surely if it's because of tumah, etc., and we have to be, God forbid, ka'avol, ka'menuda, v'chulu, v'chulu, ala, and yana, which the Tzoras, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give, like the Meforshim explain, they don't call the Sedra Metzorah, they called it the Parshat of Torah, that it should bring from the tumah Tzoras, the true Torah, that the Kohen, who, like the Meir Simcha explains, that he is the one who is immune, he has the inherent immunity because he is Vayibodel Aaron La'agdisha Kodesh Kadoshim. Therefore, he's separated and segregated by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Lift us up above and beyond and lofty into a higher madrega, and reveal within us the koyach of our nefesh elikis, that it should bring us above and beyond all the illnesses and all the negative things and all the evil. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should protect mankind, and especially Klal Yisrael, B'sech Klal Yisrael, for a full shleima, l'chaim b'levracha. And because so much time passed, we're giving against tzedakah. Yidden, don't forget to go to tzedakah every hour on the hour. Yashar koyach to Dr. Lankren for sponsoring the shir, the Nishmas' mothers, Luzana Gutabetter, Yashar koyach. Thank you very much, Menshi Schneier, for looking after the technical parts of this evening. Yashar koyach to everyone, both in the macro and micro, however you say it, communal and individual. Each individual, the Eibusher should give you all the strength to cope with the Torah of the Rogatchover and the Torah in general. Hashem should be making a matzah upon you and yourselves and your families and your environment and your communities. L'chaim v'levracha, thanks for hosting and thanks for having me and thanks for joining us. A gute Nacht will be, Mir Hashem, please God, next week. Good night, Hatzlacha Rabbi. And let me just bring to your attention, there's a fair bit we couldn't say. There's a fair bit which is discussed in many of the different forum we mentioned. But I really endeavored to cut down. And halavai, ich betach is alt men beuchel sein. I kept you over time. Please God, the next year is going to be, I keep on saying it. Halavai, I should keep my word. Bli neder. I'll endeavor to make it short.